Sleepy town settled for the night, where every lawn is tailored just right, and it's about time that the back porch light comes on. At that house down the street, at that house on Magnolia Street. I watched the whole Witches of Essex documentary on
Ooh.
Tubi. Literally, I had the closed captioning on, and like every few sentences, I was pause, tick, 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 pause.
You know you
I
can
like
dictate on here?
transcript. I did not know you could do that, but I tried dictating on my phone, and it kept like getting the words wrong.
Oh.
So I was like, this isn't even, this is pointless.
Oh.
I was putting I like hit the speaker button on my phone, and I was like kind of letting it do its thing, and then I would read it. I'm like, that makes no sense. So I just typed it. But I mean, it was cool because I got to watch the entire documentary and got some really good information out of it. So
Awesome.
we'll talk about that a little later on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, Witch. Hey, I'm Justina.
I'm Christina.
Welcome to Magnolia Street, your one and only musically inspired practical magic fandom podcast.
Every week we deep dive on different aspects of the movie and the books, as well as treat your ears to our very own practical magic inspired original music. Last week we dove broom-first into the exciting buzz surrounding the filming of Practical Magic 2, and this week we're following the ley lines across the Atlantic to the misty moors and cobbled alleys of Essex, UK.
And why Essex, you ask? Well, in the Book of Magic, Kylie Owens flees to this historic English county in search of answers and perhaps a way to finally break the Owens family curse. It's a place steeped in centuries of folklore, spellcraft, and yes, real-life witch trials, but Essex isn't just a backdrop, it's a portal. Because before the Owens women called Massachusetts home, their ancestor Maria Owens was born in Essex during the 1600s, as told in magic lessons. From there, her path took her to Curacao Islands, into the arms of Salem's most infamous Judge John Hathorne, and eventually to New England, where her legacy and the curse would take root.
And speaking of Salem, did you know that there's an Essex Street right in the heart of Witch City? While it shares the name, it likely doesn't trace its origins back to Essex, England, but the coincidence is worth a curious glance, and we'll look into that too.
Yeah, in this episode, we're unraveling the rich tapestry of witchcraft history in Essex, UK, from the infamous Chelmsford trials to the whispered legends passed down through hedge witches and cunning folk. Was Maria Owens inspired by one of these real-life witches? What truths linger in the shadows of fiction? So grab your broomsticks and your blackthorn wands. We're headed to Essex, witches. So before we dive in today, there are a couple behind-the-scenes photos that have graced social media with its presence since we released last week's Practical Magic 2 casting updates episode. Did you see these?
I did see these, yes. You shared them on our story. I wanted to paste them right on our post because we're chronicling everything.
Yeah.
Does Jillian now not have bangs?
I guess so. So, theory maybe, that first scene that we saw the behind the scenes of with Jillian with the fringe bangs in the cemetery, that must be a flashback.
Oh, okay. Well, she's showing up wherever they are in the UK with two massive suitcases, Jillian style. Sandra just has that one little baggie, that weekender bag. She's like, I'm not staying long. I'm getting my kid and going home.
Yeah, she's got on a blue trench coat,
So
that
pretty.
beautiful brown leather. She probably pulled that out of the aunt's closet, a weekender leather bag, and some kind of handkerchief hanging out of the bag. She's sporting a side braid.
I will say they must have changed their minds because in one of these photos, Jillian is holding the green luggage in her left hand. And then if you scroll down the other photo, pink luggage in her left hand.
That's right.
Why did they do that?
Color analysis.
Color analysis.
Yeah, because she's got on like a yellow trench coat or something. I don't know. What's that look like?
Yeah, like a open kimono, I don't know,
Right.
looks very silky and not weather appropriate for
Not
England.
at all. No, not for the London rain, right? But she is still sporting that green color on her that she had on in the first movie. She
Love
looks
that color.
great. She looks great in green, right?
Yes.
And a lot of these are like kind of crew shots. There's a lot of crew hanging around with like boom mics and like equipment, and I'm trying to look at any other details we notice in these photos. Is there anything else that sticks out? They're in a train station, it looks like, right?
Are they? Okay,
It looks
couldn't tell.
to me like they have their suitcases. I don't know. It's giving Harry Potter vibes to me.
Kinda.
Like they're getting on platform 9 3/4 with their
Right.
bags. Yeah, I don't know where. So there's these photos of Nicole and Sally, Nicole and Sandra in this train station doing their thing. If it is a train station, but they look like they're somewhere where they're about to travel. The next photo, though, is not them at all. It's Sally, yes, her, but then we have the Lee Pace, whatever character he's playing. They're kind of like on a railing, like a banister hanging over, like, look, I don't know. It looks like they're kind of high up. Is this a
This
train?
could be at the same location, because it's got the wrought iron, just a little different color, but yeah, they're on a balcony kind of deal,
Mhm.
or on stairs. I can't tell. It's probably a balcony, but there's another person beside Lee Pace with their hands on the railing. Who is
I
this?
did not even notice that. Yeah, I did not even notice that. It's the ghost.
It's
The
the
ghost.
ghost.
Yeah, so I'm wondering, well, this clearly might be the same scene because Sandra has on that same coat.
Hmm.
So I'm guessing wherever she is, she's meeting this character at this spot, which they were probably traveling from because they had their suitcases in this scene. So
Hmm.
I'm wondering, is this Vincent picking them up at the train station?
I
Because
don't know.
she doesn't meet Vincent. I mean, she doesn't meet Ian till a little later on when they get into Essex, right?
That's true. Oh, I don't like not knowing.
Me either. So after seeing this photo, I put up a poll on our Instagram stories and we got some very split feedback.
Yeah.
So I posted this photo and I said, "Oh, OMG." So I put a little caption that says, I mean, no tattoos are visible, and his blazer is giving older man, not the edgy character description of Ian that we've come to know in the book. So I don't know. What do y'all think? So I put a little poll that said Lee Pace is Ian Wright or Vincent Owens. 45% said Ian, 55% said Vincent. So there's more people in the Vincent park than there is on the Ian
That's
fan.
crazy. He,
Isn't
to me,
it?
is too young. Also, isn't
Right.
he supposed to be a professor? So
Right.
he can wear a blazer if he wants to wear a blazer.
Yeah, I just think it's very sneaky that these photos decided to surface and no tattoos are visible. So we don't even get like a sneak peek, like, or any inkling that it could be Ian, you
Right.
know?
Yeah, right.
So
Plain and
we
sneaky.
got a, yeah, we got a DM from someone named Sam Lord who said, Vincent is Sally's grandfather. This is not a man playing a grandfather.
Right. This
Fair
is
enough.
not a look you give your granddaughter.
No, no, not at all. And yeah, so I mean, these polls are all in good fun, but the fact that so many people are convinced that he's Vincent says something, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Maybe Vincent is just that damn fine that he can be played by someone like Lee Pace. Just saying,
He's supposed to be. Yeah,
right?
he is.
Yeah.
I
So,
don't know that age gap thing between the aunts and how old they're supposed to be, how
huh,
old he's supposed to be. It's just not lining up. We'll
I
keep
know.
our eye on the IMDb Pro and we'll let you know when names start popping up.
I know. There's just so much up in the air still. We want answers,
Yeah, we do.
and we
I'm
hope to
checking.
be the ones to give you them. So keep checking back.
So when I went to look for those photos, they kept linking me back to a Reddit, which I
Okay.
don't give a shit about Reddit, but I ended up joining because I was like, okay, if this is where the behind the scenes photos are popping off, let me get on
Right.
there.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
hopefully we get some more from over there, but we're trying to keep an eye out. Any little
Yeah.
change, any little thing, we'll let you know.
We are not the first ones to have this news. I saw these pop up in social media, like other people posted them first,
Hmm.
and I just reposted them, like, oh my God. But like, obviously, we want to talk about it here.
I
Yeah.
love it. I love her in all blue. Sally's got like a cool leather belt with like a cool buckle, and she's
Yeah.
looking very classy.
Yeah. I
Her
just think it
hair
is.
is herring.
Yeah, both of their hairs are herring, but like, good point. Like, yeah, Jillian's not sporting the fringe bang anymore. So what the hell was that first scene that we saw, and how long in the past ago was that? You know?
Right. That's what is making me think, is this Gary's funeral?
Yeah.
And then they've had time to kind of mourn, and then maybe they come. I don't know. There's so many unanswered questions with this
Yeah.
outfit.
The math ain't mathin'. But
Nothing.
yeah, I'm excited to keep seeing more of these sneak peeks. And whoever is on this movie crew that is letting these photos leak, unless it's on location and there are passerbyers that are able to
Mm.
scope out, the filming.
Mm-hmm.
and they're just taking these pictures and just blasting them all over social media. Because I mean, if you're filming in a train station, there's only so much you can, I guess, barricade off. I mean, like,
Right. There's a shit
so
ton of people there.
yeah, so they can't keep too much a secret, so some of these things are gonna unfortunately leak, but it's cool to see
It is
what
cool to
what
see.
they're doing already, and so
Very
many
surreal.
questions, and I like having these little clues and trying to figure it all out. It's kind of fun, right?
Do you see in the one photo of Jillian, like her little slip dress? She's got like a lacy, covery neck thing, very
Oh
aunt style. Do you see that?
yeah, I do.
What
Interesting.
a choice.
Yeah. And also, if you've noticed, Jillian in this scene, whatever the scene is, she's more of that strawberry blonde. It's not that red Jillian hair
Yeah.
that
Yeah. Why you
Jillian
be toning
has.
that down? Maybe it's the
Yeah.
lighting, but
I
yeah, no
hope
more
so.
bangs.
Because I don't know. I don't know if I've given you my hot take on Nicole Kidman's hair before, but I think that lighter color washes her out. I was excited to see the stark, fiery engine red hair back on Jillian. So if they're gonna go this route for the entire rest of the film, you know how I'm gonna feel about it.
That one woman, there's a woman in like an orange sweater, has
Yeah.
more red hair than
Yeah.
Jillian does in this shot for some reason.
That red sweater has more red hair than Jillian's hair.
That's right, right. That's right. Yeah,
Man,
we'll keep y'all posted. I'm so looking forward to more of this fever dream that's to
yeah.
come, right?
Yeah, it really does feel so surreal, right? Like, how did we get here?
I
When we
don't.
started this podcast a few years ago, this was all a dream. Like, could they ever do another, movie or a spin-off series or what? Like, and there was some HBO stuff chatting in the works, but that never panned out. And like, to see this happening now with the same principal cast, it's wild.
We didn't start this expecting any more content, like any
Not at
more
all.
of this world to be created. We just loved it for what it was and wanted to share that. And then, boom, we got blessed
Yeah, we
with a
did.
number two.
Yeah, and Christina, if we have this much to talk about with just one film and four books, but like one film, we're gonna have a whole other film to pick apart for the next decade.
We're gonna need a CPA to do our taxes. This is gonna be intense doing this year after year after
Jesus.
year after year.
Right.
Ah,
But I love talking about it.
yeah,
So as long as you love talking about it, we're gonna keep
yeah.
talking about it. So
Okay.
on that note, we're gonna get into today's topic, the Witches of Essex, because that is where this next film, Book of Magic, is going to take place.
The term Witches of Essex refers to the numerous individuals, primarily women, accused and tried for witchcraft in the English county of Essex during the 16th and 17th centuries. Essex holds a notorious reputation for its high number of witchcraft trials and executions, with Matthew Hopkins, the self-proclaimed witchfinder general, playing a significant role in this period. Essex saw more witchcraft trials and executions than any other English county during this period. And Matthew Hopkins' influence was active in the 1640s, and this was instrumental in intensifying the witch hunts in Essex, leading to a surge in accusations and executions. The St. Osyth witch trials, sorry if I'm saying that wrong,
Oh,
of
yeah.
1582 involved 14 women accused of witchcraft, some of whom were convicted and executed. Accusations ranged from using animal familiars to causing harm, illness, or even death to neighbors and livestock. Other factors like mental illness, perceived queerness, and knowledge of herbal remedies was also used to support accusations. Several individuals, whom we'll talk about shortly, like Agnes Waterhouse, Ursula Kemp, Joan Prentice, and Joan Upney, were prominent figures in the Essex witch trials. The Essex witch trials remain a significant part of the county's history, with ongoing discussions and investigations into the events and the individuals involved, according to BBC. Memorials have been erected to commemorate the victims, and in a 2018 paranormal documentary, The Witches of Essex, directed by Chris Halton, explores the history and folklore surrounding the witchcraft in Essex.
Yeah, we're gonna get into that documentary a little later on. Fascinating documentary. I think everybody should go watch it. It's actually free on Tubi. It's very eerie, like how it's like filmed, because he does these like really artsy shots of him like walking through like cemeteries and like, down cobblestone streets, but it's like in sepia tone with just like this atmospheric, like whirring music in the background. And then he gets to his location and then he stops and then he like talks to the camera and just spits out facts.
Okay,
Yeah.
we're having a super rainy day. I might do that today and get a little spook
It
spook
is
going on.
it's a good watch for a spooky rainy day. Yeah. It is a little like calming though, so don't fall asleep.
I have some hot cocoa.
Yeah.
Oh, that'll be nice.
Nice hot cup of tea.
Mhm.
Yeah, but great documentary. Check it out. No one has any excuse not to watch it because it's free
It's free.
on Tubi. But we're gonna get into the books right now. We're gonna do a little deep dive into all this and more. But first we're gonna revisit magical lessons first. So, in Magic Lessons by Alice Hoffman, Essex, England is the birthplace of Maria Owens, the matriarch of the Owens magical bloodline. While Hoffman doesn't dwell extensively on detailed historical accounts of Essex witch trials, she infuses the fictional narrative with themes that reflect the real-world climate, fear, suspicion, and persecution surrounding women accused of witchcraft in the 17th century England, particularly in rural counties like Essex. First of all, it talks about women as healers and accused as witches. In Essex, Maria's adoptive mother, Hannah Owens, is a healer and an herbalist, a cunning woman who lives on the outskirts of society and teaches Maria the nameless arts. This reflects the historical reality of Essex, UK, where many of those accused of witchcraft were women who practiced folk medicine or midwifery. Hoffman draws on this archetype to show the fine line between respect and suspicion that women healers faced. Do as you will, but harm no one. Hannah's creed shows how magic was rooted in care, not harm. Yet even benevolent magic couldn't protect women from accusations. Second, the outsider status and the power of the marginalized. Both Hannah and Maria are outsiders socially, economically, and spiritually. This mirrors how many of the real Essex witches were women on the margins, widows, unmarried women, the poor, or those who challenged authority. In Magic Lessons, Maria's power is inextricably tied to her outsider identity, both her vulnerability and her strength. And third, the transmission of witch lore, generational and oral tradition. The magic of Essex in Magic Lessons isn't grand or dramatic. It's whispered, taught in kitchens and woods, and passed down woman to woman. This echoes the oral traditions of English folk magic. Maria's early lessons from Hannah, how to use herbs, read signs, and listen to the natural world, evoke the historical wise women of Essex who carried on the craft in secrecy. Number 4, persecution, violence, and the burning of the wise women. While Magic Lessons doesn't portray a formal witch trial in Essex, it does not shy away from the violence that defined the era. One of the most harrowing scenes in the novel is the murder of Hannah Owens, Maria's adoptive mother, who was dragged from her home and killed alongside her familiar. I don't remember, was it a black cat? I don't remember
I
what
don't know if
color
it was
cat.
black. I don't remember.
Yeah. Killed alongside her familiar, a cat, by a fearful, superstitious mob. Her house is set ablaze, erasing not only her life but her legacy. I don't remember, but was it Thomas Laughlin's crew that did that to her?
Yeah, like a bunch of dudes. Like
Yeah,
a crew.
yeah. Rebecca, Maria's real mother's, not baby daddy, but her husband that she was running away from, that Hannah helped.
Wonder what Rebecca's maiden name was.
Yeah, they never say.
They never said.
Yeah, I was looking for it, and I was like, okay.
I want to ask Alice. Did she ever give her a maiden name?
Go Ask Alice. Isn't that a book too?
It is a
Go Ask
book.
Alice. Yeah, we'll have to ask her. The fictional scene is deeply reflective of real events that took place in Essex, UK, especially during the peak of the English witch hunts in the 16th and 17th centuries. Women who lived alone, practiced herbalism, or kept cats were often accused of consorting with the devil. Their punishments were rarely formal or just, and often involved mob justice, lynchings, or burnings at the stake. Through this scene, Hoffman captures the terror of being a woman who knew too much, healed too many, or lived too independently. Hannah's death is more than just a plot point. It's a haunting commentary on how society systematically erased women's power by labeling it dangerous. This moment also sets the tone for Maria's story. Her magic is born not just from love and knowledge, but from grief, injustice, and inherited trauma, themes that resonate through the Owens family line for generations to come. We have number 5, love, betrayal, and the ironic geography of fate. After the trauma of losing Hannah and fleeing the hostile landscape of Essex, UK, Maria Owens embarks on a journey that spans oceans and centuries of consequence. She leaves behind her ancestral homeland, a place of deep-rooted folk magic and persecution, and travels to the Dutch-controlled island of Curaçao, Curacao, where she falls in love with none other than John Hathorne, a man who will later become a judge in the infamous Salem witch trials. And herein lies one of the most poetic and ironic turns in Hoffman's narrative. Maria, descended from Essex witches, becomes entangled with the very patriarchal force that will help define the American witch panic. She's impregnated by a man who would go on to condemn women for the very powers she possesses. It's a cruel twist of fate, or perhaps a spell gone awry, that Maria's love leads her straight into the heart of her future suffering. But the geographical symbolism doesn't end there. Maria eventually follows Hathorne to Salem, Massachusetts, to tell him he has a daughter, a journey heavy with emotional and generational weight. Once in Salem, she finds herself walking down Essex Street, a real historical thoroughfare in the city, which shares its name with the very county in England that she fled. The synchronicity is uncanny. So here's a quote from Magic Lessons. "You're going to him in Boston," Samuel guessed, "and he knows you're arriving?" Not yet. She was not the sort to tell a lie, even when it might have ended the conversation. "And do you even know where he is?" "Essex County," she said primly, as if it were a proper address. "Essex County and Boston are not one and the same. This is a vast land, Maria. It's not the island of Curacao." She threw him a dark look. "You ask too many questions." Is it just
We have
coincidence?
to remember she's very young still.
Yeah. Oh,
Like
yeah.
a teen mom.
That's right. She
Yeah.
is very young. Is it just coincidence, or is it fate winding its red thread through history, geography, and bloodline? Though there's no formal historical connection between Essex County, UK, and Essex Street in Salem, the literary parallel is too delicious to ignore. Essex Street in Salem, Massachusetts has a rich history, evolving from colonial road to bustling commercial hub. Originally named after the Earl of Essex, the street was established in 1674 and later divided into east and west sections. It played a significant role in Salem's maritime history, and more recently has become known for its connection to the Salem witch trials and its vibrant tourist attraction. But in the world of Magic Lessons, it becomes a mirror. Maria cannot escape the shadows of Essex, whether it be in the old country or the new world. She walks the same named street under new stars, haunted by the same fears, carrying the same fire within her. Essex becomes a symbol not just of a place, but of a legacy. A place where witches are feared, love is betrayed, and women must forge their power from the ashes of injustice.
Is Essex Street where there's like no cars, is like the main drag of shops? Oh, that's Derby.
It kind of like turns into each other. Technically, Essex Street is what we've been calling Derby Square.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's actually Essex Street, and that runs through, the other direction where we were going in like that bank witch shop with the big witch on the ceiling with the like checkered
Yes.
floors. Like that whole street is Essex Street
Okay.
as well. There is a website called streetsofsalem.com. I guess it's a blog, somebody's blog named Donna Seeger. She wrote a post called Evolving Essex Street. And it's got maps, it's got old illustrations and old pictures. I will add this to our links, and I'll also add it to the chat bar here if you want to take a peek at that. Check that out. That's
Cool.
pretty cool. It's a
All
cool
right.
resource. We could do an entire episode probably on Essex Street and Salem, because
know.
there's so many like businesses and like things
Yeah.
to do over there nowadays,
Mhm.
the tourism over there. Okay, so then lastly on this list for Magic Lessons is number 6, Hedge Magic and the Land Itself. The connection to the land in Essex, the herbs, animals, and seasons grounds Maria's magic in the old ways. Essex in Magic Lessons is painted as a place where the veil between the natural and the magical is thin, much like how folk traditions believed certain places in the countryside were, quote, enchanted or sacred.
Essex doesn't just show up in Magic Lessons, it also shows up in Book of Magic, bookending the series. In Alice Hoffman's The Book of Magic, parts of the story are set in the village of Essex, England. While a specific landmark isn't named in the snippets, the narrative indicates a focus on the history and the culture of the Essex village, particularly as it relates to Ian's mother and the tradition of cunning women. Additionally, the characters travel to London, where Kylie visits the, quote, invisible library, a hidden repository of magical text in the Bayswater section. This location, while fictional, draws inspiration from Alice's own experience visiting the area as a writer. Therefore, while no single well-known landmark in Essex is highlighted, The narrative centers on a village and its history within the country, along with a fictional yet London-based location inspired by the city. So let's go through some of the quotes from the book. Page 13, it says, Jet's gift of the sight had intensified. She could envision the dog's heart beating under its tangled fur, just as she saw the slow unfurling of black leaves on the last surviving elm trees in Essex County. Page 27. On the fourth day, Jet and Franny went out to the greenhouse to read through the grimoire, the thick book that was the repository of the family's magical knowledge. Their treasured grimoire had been created in Essex, England by Maria Owens' adopted mother, Hannah, a birthday gift when Maria was 10, old enough to study magic. Page 47. Jet understood that the Owens family beginnings were in England, in a rural area they referred to as the first Essex County, since they lived in the second, which had been named by the Pilgrims for the home across the sea that they had left. Page 138. Let's look for my family. They poked around in various genealogy catalogs for the Owens name and found that there were many listings of births and weddings and funerals, particularly in Essex.
I think that's Kylie when she goes to that like library.
Okay.
And that guy's like helping her look through stuff.
Okay. What if Ian's that guy? I don't think they'd get a big name to play a B character. What if he's like the helper in the library?
Yeah, I don't know because he was. Oh, you mean Lee Pace?
Yeah. What did I say?
Ian. All right, so we all know who Christina thinks he is. Well, I'm thinking that wouldn't be him because Kylie is dealing with that guy in the library looking
Not
for,
Sandy.
right?
Got it.
Not Sally. So I don't know. I don't think
Thanks for putting me back on track. Good point. Page 139. The Lachlan's were a grand family once, David revealed, with a huge land grant from the court. The manor is up in Essex, just outside Thornfield. Somehow, your family and theirs were intertwined. It seemed both were cursed, and this Hannah Owens seems to be the connection. Page 164. Growing up in Essex, Ian had felt perched at the end of the world, a landscape of marshy fens and forests and fields. He longed for a different life. Page 250. Margaret Wright had grown up in Essex, and like many here, it was the only home she'd ever known. She might have left for a bigger town after having her son, one where everyone didn't know her story, but she had no desire to be anywhere else in the world. She was born into the nameless art, with her mother and grandmother raising her in the tradition of green magic, in the very house in which she still lived. By the time she was 13, she was well versed in all that grew in the woods, able to discern which could harm or heal. It was her obligation to follow her path, and it was clear from the start that she would be a healer. She was a cunning woman, not a bloodline witch, although she'd known one such individual in her time, a very old woman named Cora Wilkie, who said that in an earlier time local people had nailed the feet of a woman suspected of witchery to the ground so they couldn't run away. Cora had lived out on the fens. It was a muddy trek to see her, and few people bothered, but those who did were grateful to her, and for her cures were a revelation. A book she had handwritten, My Life as a Witch, was in the local library, carefully stored in plastic. For hundreds of years, women who were suspect had their houses burned down, their animals killed, their children taken away, and yet they were still here. If you knew where to look, it was possible to find witches in villages and towns throughout the county. They outlasted their enemies. Margaret Wright's sixth great-grandmother had passed down a story about a fire in the woods nearby that had burned alive a woman who practiced the nameless art. Hannah! It was a cautionary tale recounted throughout the generations. A woman with knowledge who could read and write, who spoke her own mind, had always been considered dangerous. Hannah Owens hadn't been forgotten, though she had become as nameless as the art she had practiced. All the same, on Midsummer's Eve, when light triumphs over darkness, women came together in Devotion Field and danced until midnight. They no longer recalled the meaning of the dance, called the witch's reel, but they remembered the steps and taught them to their daughters and granddaughters, all of whom were happy to come together to celebrate. It was the longest day of the year, after all, and people in neighboring towns could hear the gatherings from a great distance, for there was joyous music and a bonfire was set with sparks filling the inky sky.
I forgot to add this little bit in. I wanted to chat a little bit about the Durants because Catherine Durant during Maria's lifetime and Agnes, Catherine's descendant that we learn about in Book of Magic, they seem to be cunning women, right? So like I guess you can call them Alice's fictional Witches of Essex.
Yeah.
We meet Catherine Durant in Magic Lessons, Maria's timeline, right? On page 235, I guess Maria is on the docks and she's like talking to a fishmonger. And so this fishmonger says, Catherine Durant is an enchantress. The fishmonger confided in a low tone as he nodded to the other shopper. You might call her a witch. Is she? Maria craned her neck to see, for the woman they spoke of was already leaving her, her back turned to them. Her little dog gazed at Maria with bright eyes before hurrying after his mistress. I sold her fish she said wasn't fresh, and for the next 2 months I didn't sell another thing. The fishmonger went on. Not a scrap or an ounce. People walked by as if I was invisible, and those who saw me held their noses as if my wares stank. So I had a bushel of mussels delivered to her house, and after that it was business as usual. Now I send a gift of mussels or clams to her on the first of every month, and it's worked out well for both of us. Catherine Durant, she helped Maria through all these trials and tribulations in Essex, or I guess during her time there, or did she meet Catherine in Salem? I don't remember.
I don't remember either.
It's
Do you
been a while.
remember Under the Tuscan Sun?
Yes. Oh, I know who you're talking about. The girl with the ice
The
cream.
ice cream, yeah. That's who I picture. 'Cause she kind of
Yes.
saunters and does her own thing and doesn't give a
Perfect.
shit, but she's kind of like a guide, you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
A psychopomp, if you will, I
Mm-hmm.
guess. Yeah. But then Catherine has a descendant who we learn about in Book of Magic who is now friends with Vincent. I was looking through the Book of Magic, and that is who Agnes Durant, the descendant of Catherine. Jet writes a letter to, or she addresses a letter to Agnes to send to Vincent because he's in Paris at this point. So I guess Jet did know that Vincent was still alive.
I don't remember when they find out.
Right. On page 29 in Book of Magic, it says, Darling boy, Jet began, we have missed you every day. Whenever you can come home, do. Okay, so Jet knows Vincent's still alive. So she addressed the letter to Vincent's great friend Agnes Durant in Paris, then slipped the key to the house on Magnolia Street into the envelope. She and Franny walked through the gusty night to the post office where the letter was sent off in the mailbox. Unlikely he'll get the letter, Franny chimed in. She had written to Vincent several times and had never heard a word in return, although every year she received a card from Agnes with the bright greeting, all is fine here in France, which she supposed meant Vincent as well. So it seems like Agnes is kind of like, I don't know, the keeper of Vincent.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
she's kind of like seeing that, he's doing well and there's correspondence between him and his sisters, even though like it can't be him being the one to write back to them because he get in trouble probably, right? Um, so yeah, this next passage, this on page 70, it says, by this time, Vincent's dear friend Agnes Durant was well over 100. I
Okay,
wonder if she's hitting that black soap the aunts are,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah. Women in her family had lives that often spanned a century. Her great grandmother, Catherine, who had left Paris for New York. Okay, so Catherine did eventually immigrate here.
Okay.
Was said to have lived to be 120, although people swore she didn't look a day over 80. As for Agnes, she had been a great friend to Vincent and William, the one to hatch the plan for Vincent to escape the curse by dying, officially at least, and becoming someone brand new. Now, when he arrived, she greeted him at the door, gracious as she'd ever been. Stay for as long as you like, she declared. It seems like she really helped him kind of relocate and I don't know, what do you call it?
Reinvent himself. He's no,
Reinvent. Yeah.
Vincent Owens is dead.
Yes. The
Yeah.
Vincent as we knew it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm sure there's more. I'm sure we could do a whole episode on the Durants if we wanted to. Those were just a few little passages that kind of like stuck out to me. And just reminding everybody that, even though Alice I don't think she mentioned too many actual Essex witches by name, like through history, but I like how she was kind of like inventing these figures to kind of like portray those kind of cunning women that were intertwined in the lives of the Owens family.
I agree. I like that it's like you don't have to come from a bloodline of witches, which many of us don't.
Hmm.
So that's a cool way of like incorporating, like, if you are dedicated to your craft and learning and knowledge and theology and practice, then you are a witch.
Right.
You're a cunning person.
I'm a witch.
I'm a witch.
Next. Okay, so now we're gonna talk about the real life Essex witches. So first on this list is the Saint Osyth witches, And this was a group of 14 women who were tried for witchcraft in Essex in 1582. A village near Brightlingsea in Essex, St. Osyth was home to 14 women who were put on trial for witchcraft, some of whom were duly convicted according to the law. The first one on this list, and this I'm just kind of like giving the basis here, but we're going to deep dive into all these women in a second. Ursula Kemp was like a prominent figure during this trial. She had a reputation of being able to undo curses that had been placed upon people by the means of witchcraft. And this had led to her to be one of the first ones accused of witchcraft by Grace Thurlow. Kemp's case showed what happens when a woman does not conform to societal expectations due to the accusations made by Thurlow and Leatherdale. Brian Darcy, Grace Thurlow's employer, imprisoned Ursula and committed her for trial in February of 1582 at the Seasonal Criminal Court. The testimony of Ursula Kemp's 8-year-old son helped to secure a conviction, partly because of her son's evidence and partly because of the court's promise to treat her with clemency. She confessed to the art of witchcraft, and in this confession, as was often the case, she implicated others that she knew. So she's throwing everybody else under the bus.
Yikes.
She's getting pulled under the bus and she's taking everybody with her.
Oh my God.
The charges brought against Kemp ranged from preventing beer from brewing to causing a death through means of sorcery, the punishment for which was execution. When the trial ended, Kemp was executed by hanging along with Elizabeth Bennet, who was found guilty of murdering 4 people through witchcraft and confessed to having 2 familiars. And there's this book titled The Witches of St. Osyth by Maria and Gibson. So we'll add that. Everybody can add that to their reading list. You can either buy it in print or ebook, but I think this website, cambridge.org, that I linked here, I think you might be able to read the whole thing through here if you want a digital format of it. Yeah, it seems like public. Oh wait, no, it says digital access for individuals is like $30 to purchase the book. Or I guess if you're a Cambridge student, this is Cambridge University Press. Maybe if you're a student, you can log in and probably get it for free.
Alrighty.
Yeah.
Elizabeth Bennet, like in Pride and Prejudice? That's a very popular name.
Oh.
Elizabeth Bennet.
Or Linda Bennet.
Linda Bennet. The Bennets.
Right? So Ursula Kemp, deep diving now further on Ursula, there's a more well-rounded, I guess this is the Wikipedia page, there's a more well-rounded account of that whole situation on there. So Ursula Kemp, or Ursly Kemp, her alias was Gray, so I guess Ursula Kemp Gray, circa 1525 to 1582. She was an English cunning woman and midwife who in 1582 was tried for witchcraft and hanged. Kemp was accused of and apparently confessed to using familiars to kill and bring sickness to her neighbor. She was born in St. Osyth, Essex. She was a cunning woman who was frequently called upon by her neighbors to heal ailments and sicknesses. Kemp, as a cunning person, meant that she was trusted in her community to heal and protect by using folk medicine, and she was not seen as a threat initially, but she was later blamed for intentionally causing illness and death, eventually being tried for witchcraft in Chelmsford in February 1582. Kemp is referenced in discussions about historical context of folk magic and witchcraft practices due to accusing witchcraft of being popular at the time. She was part of the lower class and made a living by midwifery, harlotry, and white witchcraft.
What?
She was a harlot! She was tricked and fooled into giving up names. Okay, so she didn't do this vindictively, it seems. It seemed like she was kind of coerced maybe into giving false statements. Yeah. So she was tricked or fooled into giving up names of these other women who were allegedly participating in witchcraft and having familiars in St. Osyth. At her trial, several of her neighbors testified against her, making statements to Justice Brian Darcy.
Wait,
and
we
Darcy?
got Elizabeth Bennet and a Mr. Darcy?
Hold up.
Hold the
Jane
phone.
Austen, we see you. Did
Okay.
she pull these names from witch trial, the Essex witch trials?
That would be amazing.
What? So she was one of 14 women who would have indictments set against her, and one of 2 women who were hanged, the other being Elizabeth Bennet. Along with her friend Alice.
Okay.
Along with her friend Alice Newman, she was accused of causing the deaths of Edna Stratton and 2 children, Joan Thurlow and Elizabeth Leatherdale. Kemp's story reflects the transition from folk practices to more formal accusations of witchcraft and is an example of what earlier accusations looked like compared to the accusations during the modern period. Kemp's trial was more formal due to her accusations being rooted in fear, thought of malicious supernatural harm to others, as well as an execution compared to later accusations being rooted in a more organized process in using the Malleus Maleficarum in 1487. She lived in a small community where small grudges and disagreements are more prevalent. During this time of the barter system being used, Kemp's accusations in trial included a lot of begging and bargaining for results. She only gave up names due to her receiving perceived freedom, which turned out to be false later on. So that's how it seems like they coerced her, like saying, like, you will get immunity if you give us names.
Oh, doesn't that sound familiar?
Yeah, but then ultimately they're like, nah, fuck that, you're
I
dead
could see that
anyway.
happening. Yeah.
Right, yeah. So, due to her history of quarrels with women in her community, accusations followed since this was one of the easier ways to get back at someone in a small community during this time. So fucked up,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
This is like Desperate Housewives on a whole other scale.
This is Mean Girls.
This is Mean Girls, right? Yeah, like Regina George's everywhere. Neighbor and former friend Grace Thurlow testified that when her son Davy was sick, she asked for Kemp's help. Davy temporarily recovered from his illness, and Thurlow believed that Kemp had cured him. It was reported that Kemp cured Thurlow's son by using incantations. Sometime later, Thurlow and Kemp argued over the care of Thurlow's baby daughter Joan. At a few months old, Joan fell from her cradle and died of a broken neck. When Thurlow became lame, she again asked for Kemp's help. Thurlow's lameness that she contracted was crippling arthritis. Kemp agreed to heal her for 12 pence. Thurlow got better, but then refused to pay Kemp her fee, saying that she could not afford it. The two women argued again, and Kemp threatened to get even with Thurlow, who became lame again. Thurlow testified that since that quarrel, either she or her son had suffered. She blamed Kemp for her son's illness, her own lameness, and the death of her baby. Thurlow complained to the magistrate, and an investigation followed. Alice Leatherdale testified that Kemp had asked her for some scoring sand, which is like an abrasive cleaning agent, and that she had refused her, knowing Kemp to be a, quote, naughty beast. Leatherdale's daughter, Elizabeth, later saw Kemp, who, quote, murmured at her. When Elizabeth fell ill and died, Leatherdale blamed Kemp for bewitching the girl to death. Thomas Rabbit, R-A-B-B-E-T, Kemp's son, who noted to have been persuaded by Justice Darcy to testify against his mother, saying that she used witchcraft. Kemp's 8-year-old son, Thomas, testified that his mother kept 4 spirits or familiars.
Okay.
Kemp admitted to having had 2 girl spirits punish people with lameness and other diseases of bodily harm and to destroy cattle. She claimed to have 2 boy spirits who punished others by killing them. He described them as a gray cat called Typhon, a white lamb called Tighty, a black toad called Pigeon, and a black cat called Jack, J-A-C-K-E. Or Jake, I'm not sure. He said that he had seen his mother give her familiars beer and cake and let them suck blood from her body. Thomas said that he had been present when Alice Newman had visited his mother. He said that his mother had given Newman an earthenware pot, which he believed to contain the familiars. Days later, he saw Newman return, telling Kemp that she had sent spirits to kill a local man and his wife. Overall, her trial, which followed 2 rounds of accusations, displayed consistent patterns in both the nature of the charges and the context in which they were brought forward. Much of the evidence recorded during the proceedings was presented in the first person, including statements and testimonies that could only have been heard by Justice Brian Darcy himself, suggesting that the case may have been influenced by his personal involvement and authority in the matter. Justice Brian Darcy was a committed witch hunter in the 1500s, known for leading many witch trials, including the case of Ursula Kemp, where he played a key role in accusing and condemning those believed to be witches. Kemp is guessed to have resided in, quote, the cage, which was a type of prison and form of public humiliation and confinement. During her trial, she possibly spent time in this small space that was barred and sometimes suspended in public places like market squares or outside castles. They had something like that in the show Salem that I watched. Like the jail was it was like out in the square, so people could see who was being jailed.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like public humiliation, you know? So let's talk about the confession. Justice Brian Darcy said that Kemp made a full confession to him in private. Kemp told him that approximately 10 years previously, she had experienced a lameness in her bones. She had gone to a local cunning woman who had told Kemp that she had been bewitched and that she should unwitch herself. She recommended a ritual to Kemp using hog's dung, charnel. What's charnel?
I don't know.
Sage and St. John's wort. Kemp performed the ritual and had recovered. Two women who she knew requested her help for lameness. So I guess they saw her heal herself and then in turn was like, oh well, if it worked for you, can you help us heal ourselves too? So she helped them in the same way that she had helped herself, and they had apparently recovered. Since then, she had performed healing services for her neighbors. She admitted to the four familiars that her son had mentioned. She said that there were two male spirits that killed people and two female spirits who brought sickness to people and destroyed cattle. Kemp went on to confess to sending her familiars to make Grace Thurlow lame and to kill Joan Thurlow, Elizabeth Leatherdale, and Kemp's sister-in-law. She named 12 other women as witches, 6 of whom were hanged, including Kemp in 1582. Many of the accused freely confessed to witchcraft despite knowing they faced death as a result. Ursula Kemp was hanged in Chelmsford in 1582. In 1921, the skeletons of 2 women were found in a St. Osyth garden by Charles Brooker, one of which was believed to be that of Kemp. I don't know what proof they got, like DNA, I don't know how they figure that out, but that's what it says. The witches' skeletons became a local tourist attraction with an admission charge to view them. In 2007, historian Alison Rowlands said that according to her research, the skeletons could belong to any of 10 women who were executed for witchcraft in the 16th and 17th centuries. So there is a possibility that it wasn't actually her.
Mm-hmm.
A more recent forensic study suggests that the bones are of Roman era provenance. Additionally, Kemp's body was noted to have had her body dipped in pitch and left on the gallows for 4 weeks.
Wow.
In 1921, Charles Brooker, the 2 skeletons mentioned above, one believed to be Kemp's, buried on a north-south axis with iron rivets through her joints, suggesting that they were witches. The remains, purchased in 1963 by Cecil Williamson for the Museum of Witchcraft, were displayed in a purple silk-lined coffin. This exhumation was televised, which drew public attention to her story and the superstitions surrounding her death. Williamson also found iron spikes, which could be connected to centuries-old customs meant to prevent those believed to be witches, restless spirits, or even vampires from leaving their graves to disturb the living. Later, in 1999, they were sold to Robert Lankowitz, who used them to enhance the atmosphere of his library.
Oh.
Okay, he's using that for the aesthetic. That seems kind of messed up.
Okay.
Following Lankowitz's death, the remains returned to the Museum of Witchcraft, though controversy persists about whether they truly belong to Kemp or another executed woman from the era.
I wonder how much you paid for those.
Yeah.
Just have them go back to the museum.
Who the hell is Robert Lankowitz anyway?
I don't know, but did you see that Annabelle the doll has an owner?
Matt Rife, comedian Matt Rife. Did you see the picture?
No.
Okay, so there's a picture floating around of Matt Rife and the dude that he purchased this conjuring, I guess, dynasty from. I don't know.
Right.
There's a picture of them standing in front of the Annabelle doll case.
Yeah.
And behind the Annabelle doll, it's you have to zoom in and lighten it up. There's a demon in that picture. Didn't the dude that just took the Annabelle doll on tour, that dude died?
That's what I'm saying. Was he not the owner?
No, Matt Rife just bought the whole collection from the
guy
dude
who
that died.
Okay. Okay.
Anyway,
this next woman we're going to talk about, Agnes Waterhouse, I heard first time from the Witch Pajama Hour. They did a really good episode on her, but we're going to cover her here now a little bit. Justina's going to take us through the trial, but to introduce her, Agnes Waterhouse was born 1503 and died in 1566, also known as Mother Waterhouse, was one of the first women executed for witchcraft in England. In 1566, she was accused of witchcraft along with 2 other women, Elizabeth Frances and Joan Waterhouse. All 3, I wonder if they're related.
Right.
All 3 women were from the same village, Hatfield, Peveril. She confessed to having been a witch and that her familiar was a cat, later turned into a toad, by the name of Satan, which originally belonged to the other woman, Elizabeth Frances. Agnes was put to trial in Chelmsford, Essex, England in 1566 for using witchcraft to cause illness to William Finn, who died the 1st of November 1565. She was also charged with using sorcery to kill livestock, cause illness, as well as bring about the death of her very own husband, Owen style. 18-year-old daughter, Joan, okay, was
All right.
also accused, but found not guilty of the same crime. Joan Waterhouse's testimony ultimately helped to convict the two other women. Agnes was hanged and was one of the first women executed under the Witchcraft Act 1562 in England, the first being Elizabeth Lowry of Great Waltham, Essex.
Waltham!
Waltham.
Look at that.
Okay.
Interesting. Agnes, do you think Alice took her character Agnes Durant from this real life Essex witch, Agnes Waterhouse?
Yeah, she could have taken her name, maybe switched because
Yeah.
Catherine was the 1600s,
Right.
and Agnes was the more
Or a modern
1960s,
one?
70s, yeah,
Yeah.
modern one.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Interesting Easter egg, though, if that is the case. Again, I love how Alice always does that.
Mm-hmm.
Sneaky,
I love a
sneaky.
history.
Right. So here's a little bit more information about the trial of Agnes Waterhouse. This is from a recorded pamphlet from 1566 titled The Examination and Confession of Certain Witches, spelt Wytches, at Kensford in the county of Essex before the, how do you say this? Ken's Majesties? Judges?
Sounds right.
Um, on July 26, 1566. The pamphlet was written by John Phillips and, though incomplete, outlines the testimonies of the three women accused of being witches. During the first examination, Reverend Thomas Cole and Sir John Fortescue were present. Sir Gilbert Gerard, the Queen's attorney, and John Southcote, Justice of the Queen's Bench, were present for the second examination. The presence of all these men suggests that the case was considered to be of unusual significance. During the trial, Elizabeth Frances was examined first. She confessed to possessing the familiar, a white-spotted cat named Satan, or Sathan. I guess they said it in the old tongue. Elizabeth Frances received the cat from her grandmother, Mother Eve of Hatfield Peveril, who taught her witchcraft when she was 12 years old. Elizabeth Frances kept the cat for 15 or 16 years. That's a long time for a cat to
Yeah.
live.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I know some cats do live to be like 20 years old. They live a lot longer than dogs do. So 15 or 16 years before eventually giving it to Agnes Waterhouse. According to Elizabeth Frances, the cat spoke to her in a strange hollow voice and would do anything for her in exchange for a drop of blood. She confessed to stealing sheep, killing several people, including a wealthy man, Andrew Biles, who would not marry her after she became pregnant with his child. Frances also said that the cat instructed
Is this
her on...
Maria?
Right?
God.
Andrew Boyles? Is that John Hathorne?
Right. The parallel.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, so Frances also said the cat instructed her on what herbs to drink to terminate the pregnancy. I wonder if the cat was like, yo, you should do a moxibustion with some mugwort. It'll
Is
fix
this
you right up.
Salem from Sabrina?
A
That
little
weird
mugwort will
accent.
fix you right up. Yeah, later after Frances married, she was unhappy and willed the cat to kill her 6-month-old daughter and make her husband lame. The confessions that Elizabeth Frances made expanded the scope and her crimes considerably. Elizabeth Frances was the first to be accused and is the one who accused Agnes Waterhouse. She was given a lighter sentence but was hanged after a second conviction 13 years later. A later pamphlet from the 1579 trial shows that Elizabeth Frances and Agnes Waterhouse were sisters. Elizabeth Frances gave the cat Satan to Agnes Waterhouse. I like how they're just passing around this cat, like, nonchalantly named Satan.
Yeah, for a cake. For like home goods.
It is so fucking bizarre to me. Um, so, so they're passing around this cat Satan in exchange for a cake. She reportedly taught her how to perform witchcraft as she was instructed before by her grandmother, Mother Eve, telling her that she must call him Satan and give him of her blood and milk as before. Agnes Waterhouse confessed to first having the cat kill one of her own pigs in order to, quote, let me just see what he can do.
Okay.
Before, after arguments with her neighbors, having their cows and geese killed. She kept the cat in a pot lined with wool, but wanted to repurpose the wool, so she supposedly turned the familiar into a toad. Other sources recount that the cat had turned himself into a toad. Agnes denied that she had ever succeeded in killing anyone by witchcraft, but was found guilty. Next, Joan Waterhouse testified that she once tried to, quote, exorcise the cat while her mother was away. I guess get the demon out? I don't
I
know.
don't like all this animal cruelty.
Yeah. Joan Waterhouse had been refused a piece of bread and cheese by a neighbor's child, Agnes Brown, and had invoked the toad's help. She told how the toad promised to assist her if she would surrender her soul, which she did, and then the toad supposedly haunted Agnes Brown in the form of a dog with horns. Joan Waterhouse did not claim to have used the supernatural services of the cat to any large degree, but by testifying to its existence, helped convict the other two women. The chief evidence against Agnes Waterhouse came from a 12-year-old neighbor, Agnes Brown. In her testimony, Agnes Brown described the demon as a black dog with a face like an ape, a short tail, a chain, and a silver whistle around his neck, and a pair of horns on his head.
12 years old.
Interesting.
Remember, a child.
Right. A black dog, though.
Yeah.
We did a whole black dog episode. Go listen to that. She said that in their first encounter, he asked her for some butter, which she refused him. So the dog, who had a key to the milk house door, just opened the door and got some butter. This is bizarre. The child
everywhere, all over the place.
The child testified that the dog later returned for the last time with a knife and threatened to kill her, saying that he would thrust his knife into my heart but would make me to die. The most incriminating piece of evidence was Agnes Brown's account of asking the dog who his dame was, to which he wagged his head toward Agnes Waterhouse's home. So, July 29th, 1566, 2 days after the trial finished, Agnes Waterhouse was executed. At this time, she repented and asked for forgiveness from God. She also confessed to her attempt to send the cat to hurt and damage the goods of her neighbor, the tailor named Wardall. However, this was regarded as having been unsuccessful because Wardall was so strong in faith. When questioned about her church habits, Agnes Waterhouse said that she prayed often, but always in Latin because the cat forbade her from praying in English. So, interesting. The Chelmsford trial was typical of English witchcraft in the absurdity of the charges, and talk about absurd, and the emphasis upon the familiar. This trial resulted in the first punishments and executions for witchcraft in England, and also inspired the first of many pamphlets on both the subject of witchcraft and particular trials that constitute an important source for witchcraft beliefs. A sketch of Mother Waterhouse is in a chapbook describing the trial in Lambeth Palace Library. So Agnes Waterhouse is a featured figure on Judy Chicago's installation piece, The Dinner Party, being represented as one of the 999 names on the heritage floor. I don't know what that means.
It was a very famous art installation. It's like this triangle table.
I'm looking at it.
Yeah, I know that there have been like documentary pieces about this art piece, but I don't know anything about it. Yeah.
All right. So interesting. Lambeth Palace Library.
I am shooketh. Like, how do you get wrapped up in just confession after confession? I don't see, or just from this story that you just read, I don't see any torture. I don't know how they interrogated her, but like, she was just on a roll. So she's like, yeah, I did all that shit. Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did. And so did fucking Francis over here.
With my cat Satan.
With Satan.
Yeah.
Oh, man. But we're not done. We have Joan Prentice or Pretense?
Prentice, yeah.
She spells it a few different ways, but unknown birthday. Joan was an English woman executed after being accused of witchcraft with another Joan, Cunning,
there were
and
so
another
many
Joan.
So many Joans.
Should we just use their last names?
Sure.
Okay.
You can make them like rappers, like Jay Cunny or like Jay Uppney.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
So both of those Joans in Essex, 1589. Okay, so main Joan, Joan OG.
OG Joan.
OG Joan. Lived in an almshouse in Sybil Headingham. She told investigators about her pet, who she thought was a ferret named Satan or Bid. The ferret, she said, had asked to be fed, and this she had done under a number of occasions. The ferret was said to have fed by biting and sucking her blood from her left cheek. You don't think there'd be a scar?
Right.
Inside of her cheek. Ew.
Oh, maybe.
During her questioning, she implicated two other women, one named Elizabeth Whale and another named Elizabeth Mott, who, she said, had used her familiar bid. The accusations did not result in any further action against them. She was charged in line with the 1563 Witchcraft Act, which defined the penalties for people found guilty of witchcraft. In time, 31 people were found guilty, and only one was a man. The 1563 Act in England required that the death penalty could only be used where the accused had caused the death of another. In O.G. Jones' case, she asked her familiar to hurt a child, but the familiar disobeyed her, and the child died.
What?
This justified the death penalty.
So let's talk about Joan's death and her legacy. She died on July 5th, 1589. She was hanged at Chelmsford with Joan Cunning and Joan Upney, who were also found guilty of similar crimes. Joan Cunning's daughter, Avis,
The car company?
yeah, was also found guilty, but she escaped immediate execution because she was pregnant. Detail of Prentice's life and death are available because the record of her trial is extant, and a copy of a publication at the time, The Apprehension and Confession of Three Notorious Witches Arraigned by the Justice, Jesus Christ, by the Justice Condemned and Executed at Chelmsford, that's the name of the entire publication, is also known.
Whoa.
So,
okay. So
yeah, that's a wild title.
Joan number 2, Joan Upney, was also accused of witchcraft and under examination admitted to having a series of sickly or runaway familiars. So she's taken in the stray cats, it sounds like. Her final 2 toads died when having heard the witch hunters were coming for her. She ran away.
Yeah, I was looking and looking for more stuff about Joan Upney because she's lumped in with these other Joans and these other, witches of this trial that were hanged for witchcraft. But I couldn't find too much about this Joan.
She did a good job. She just erased herself.
Yeah. All right. So this is from, I think, tutorsociety.com or archive.org. I managed to find some information about Joan Cunning because this information was not in the initial lump of information from those other Joans. So on this day in history, July 5th, 1589, Joan Cunning, or Coney, C-O-N-Y, one of the, quote, Essex witches, was hanged at Chelmsford. Joan Cunning was born around 1508 and was from Stinas in Essex. She was accused of killing her neighbors and causing a great storm. Cunning had told of how she knelt in a circle and prayed to Satan to conjure her familiars and spirits. The pre-trial examination of Joan Cunning, along with those of Joan Prentice and Joan Upney, was published in 1589 as The Apprehension and Confession of Three Notorious Witches. So The Apprehension and Confession of Three Notorious Witches is a pamphlet from 1589 detailing the arrest, confession, and execution of 3 women accused of witchcraft in Chelmsford, Essex, England. The women were Joan Prentice, Joan Coney, or Cunning, and Joan Upney. The pamphlet provides accounts of their alleged diabolical practices and their encounters with familiar spirit. The pamphlet, published by Thomas Law and printed by Edward Aldie, describes the women's examinations and their execution on July 5th, 1589. It includes details about their interactions with demonic entities, such as a ferret spirit, we read this before, named Satan, who spoke to Joan Prentice and demanded her soul, according to the University of Michigan. The text also details how one of the women offered her blood to the spirit. The pamphlet is considered an important historical document, shedding light on the witchcraft beliefs and the trials of the era. The only surviving copy of this pamphlet is held at Lambeth Palace Library, the one we were just talking about, that art installation, right?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Joan Prentice, who had a ferret-shaped familiar named Satan, who had allegedly killed a child. So is this familiar, the ferret-shaped familiar named Satan, different from the Agnes familiar named Satan, the Waterhouse trial that we were just talking? Are these different familiars named Satan?
Yes, I think so.
So these Essex witches just like to name their familiars Satan, whether they were a cat or a ferret. It didn't matter, I guess.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, they were Satan. I guess maybe it was just body hopping from one familiar to the
like Jimmy.
Like Jimmy, yeah. Well, Jimmy is the devil, right?
Yeah,
the devil of the desert. So these 3 women were 3.
Wait a minute. You missed something.
Wait, what I miss? Oh, wait.
Satan, who allegedly killed a child, was also hanged on the 5th of July.
Wait, they also executed the ferret. Okay.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
Oh, Joan Prentice.
Oh, wait. Maybe they're talking about Joan. Joan, who had the ferret, was also hanged on the 5th, as was Joan Upney. This sentence makes it sound like they hung the ferret.
Well, they could have. I mean, they did execute animals too back in the day, as we know from magic lessons. They also killed Hannah's cat, right?
True.
So, I mean, it was not unheard of to kill an animal for doing witch's bidding. I wouldn't bat an eye if that were the case here, because
Yeah.
that seemed to be common practice.
Oh.
So these three women were three of 31 Essex people, 30 women and one man, who were accused of witchcraft under the 1563 Witchcraft Act, full name, an act against conjurations, enchantments, and witchcrafts. According to this act, anyone who did use, practice, or exercise any witchcraft, enchantment, charm, or sorcery, whereby any person shall happen to be killed or destroyed, was put to death. You can read the full text of the act at witchtrials.co.uk. We will link that in our show notes. A lot of these like old texts and stuff, like they have like that old English like writing and like those
I
cool
love that.
illustrations. Like,
I love
but
it.
if you click on this link, it's kind of modernized. It's like just like text, just like what it says in the thing.
Mhm.
So take a look at that if you want to go down that rabbit hole. It's pretty long. It's pretty long. And it's a lot of like old English, like ye found here, like this enchantment, charm, and sorcery. Like I'm not even gonna attempt to read that right now.
I do love the block printing,
Yes.
like illustrations. They're so cool. They're so
Yeah.
cool.
So Joan Cunney's daughters, Avis and Margaret, were also charged with witchcraft in 1589. Avis was sentenced to hang like her mother, but pleaded pregnancy, so was hanged in 1590 after the birth of her baby, which that is really sad. Like, so now there's a baby that has no mother
Mm.
because of all of this. Margaret was found guilty of 2 counts of bewitchment and sentenced to a year of imprisonment and 6 appearances in the stocks. I don't know what that
Okay.
means.
Like they put her in the stocks for like 12 hours and maybe she gets to go lay down and then she comes
Okay.
back. And, like
Yeah.
shame, shame.
Yeah. So that is it for the Essex witches, as far as those trials are concerned. When we return, we're going to dive deep into that documentary that I was telling you all about. Chris Halton is a paranormal investigator who embarks on a journey to discover the myth and legend behind the Witches of Essex. And we're going to talk about some of the accounts. He talks about some other cases and notable characters during that time in Essex, most notably in Canewdon, Essex. So we will talk about all that and more when we return. So we will be right back. Hey, little witches! The Stinas here. If you've been listening to our podcast for a while, you would know how much we love using the Practical Magic Inner Witch Oracle deck by Grounded by the Moon.
And now we want to share the magic of Grounded by the Moon with you, our listeners. Joseph Benitez Egerton, the creator behind Grounded by the Moon, would like to offer this very special 10% off discount to all who wish to experience the magic of his Practical Magic themed tarot and oracle decks.
But that's not all. He also creates other divination tools like tarot workbooks, deck bags and altar cloths, pendulum kits, oil blends, cleansing sprays, smoke wands, teas, and ritual kits.
And let's not forget about his custom handcrafted, all-natural soy candles, where every candle is hand-poured and personally infused and charged under the light of the moon. They even come with a crystal.
And did we mention all of the ingredients in the candles are ethically sourced?
All of Joseph's offerings are just so magical. So go visit groundedbythemoon.com and use the coupon code Magnolia Magic for 10% off your entire order at checkout.
That's MAGNOLIA MAGIC. So get your discount today. You're listening to Magnolia Street Podcast. All right, everybody, welcome back. We're going to read from the Practical Magic Inner Witch Oracle by Grounded by the Moon. Go get yourself 10% off your entire order with our coupon code Magnolia Magic over on groundedbythemoon.com. So this card, Witch's Hanging Rope, the keyword on this card is protection. Let's see. Also inner strength. So this says, the witch's rope entangles you with strength and protection. Know that you are safe. If you are offered a piece of this rope, accept this gift, for there is no need to worry. You are protected from any evils that may disrupt your path. Do some protection work for yourself and those close to you. This rope is connected to and honors the witches of Salem and their magic, and provides the newer generations of witches protection, peace, and inner strength. With a piece of rope, tie a knot for each element while speaking the affirmation. Carry it with you, leave on your altar, or make a bracelet to embrace these powers. dispose of by burning and repeating the affirmation one last time. I am safe, I am protected, and I am strong.
I just find it interesting that these Essex witches are so ballsy
Mm.
and they're like, I did it. And then we have the Salem witches that were, they were just women.
Hmm.
I'm sure even the Essex women were just women and healers and seers and midwives. The take on, how they handled the situation is very polarized. It's very different.
It is
Yeah.
very different and also was handled pretty differently as well.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the Essex witches, they were either drowned, a lot of them were hanged, but then also there was the burning times, which is like a whole other ordeal.
Mhm.
No quote witches, they were all innocent
Mhm.
people, but none of the accused in Salem were burned. There was one man stoned to death, but for the most part, it was all hangings. I find it interesting that the witch's hanging rope in the realm of the Owens women and family anyway, like the aunts gave a piece of Maria's hanging rope to the girls to ward off, bad energy, bad spirits, whatever. I find it interesting how they were able to take the hanging rope, this like symbol of, the patriarchy kind of like persecuting these women for these quote evil doings, and they were able to turn it into something more positive, like here, this is to protect you, but like it wasn't to protect, it was to kill these women, used in
Yeah.
actual trials.
Yeah.
So I don't know, I just find it interesting how the women, Owens women used it for something completely opposite of what it was intended for during
Exactly.
the reign of
Yeah, because
terror,
Maria made that switcheroo of that her instinct or her intuition helped, as we know from the movie, break
break the
the
rope.
rope. But we
Yeah.
know we know Samuel had a little hand in that.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. I had reached out to a lovely Claire SB and I was asking her because we have listeners from all over the world, which is wild. But I wanted,
Yeah.
because we know she's in the UK, I just asked her if she had any sources or stories that she'd recommend us dipping our toe into, because this is on her side of the world. And she was kind enough to give us a little direction. In that, she said, "Hello, love. I know there are accused witches buried in Southminster, Burnham on Crouch, and Chelmsford. I know there's some stories about Canewdon and the witchcraft that went on in that area. In Southminster, it is said that spirits of the wrongly accused still linger. Unmarked burial sites make it hard to know who lies there, but the atmosphere at night, especially near the churchyard, has an uncanny hush. Tucked away on the Dengie Peninsula, wrapped in marshland and sea mists, sits the quiet town of Southminster. You can drive straight through and not think twice. The Church of St. Leonard stands at the heart of it all, a brooding shape against the flat sky, its stonework weathered by time and silence. It's here, along the outer edge of the churchyard, that the accused were said to be buried. Witches, they called them, women who had no voice in life and no stone in death. Oh, that's so sad.
Yeah.
No consecrated ground, no names carved in granite, just earth, just rumor, just sorrow. And yet, people say the weight is still there. A heaviness you feel in your chest as you walk the outer path of the graveyard. Cold spots, strange sounds, the sense of being watched when no one is behind you. Some say they've seen her there, a woman in a long cloak drifting through the mist toward the church, only to vanish at the gate. You don't need a monument to leave a mark. Some hauntings happen in the roots. Southminster had its share of cunning folk too. Women who knew the herbs, the tides, the moon, healers, midwives, seers, the kind of women who straddled the line between respected and feared. And when the trials came, especially under Matthew Hopkins, the so-called witch finder general, some were taken to Chelmsford for trial. Others never made it that far. One story tells of a woman who died on the journey, her body brought back and quietly buried at the edge of the churchyard. No words spoken, no prayers offered, just soil and silence. Even now, people leave rosemary there, bundles tied with red thread, little offerings left without explanation. Maybe they don't know why they do it, only that they should. Southminster isn't loud with its ghosts. It doesn't boast or beckon, but listen close enough and you'll hear them. In the hush between the branches, in the rustle of the yew, in the heaviness that settles just before dusk, the trials may have happened in Chelmsford, but in Southminster, the grief stayed behind. And in Burnham on Crouch, local lore holds that witches were buried at the crossroads or outside consecrated grounds, and several ghost sightings are attributed to women in black, thought to be accused witches. On the edge of the estuary where the river Crouch meets the North Sea, there's a little fishing town called Burnham on Croce. It's the kind of place where stories cling to the salt spray, and some of them never wash away. Today it's known for its sailing clubs and coastal charm, but centuries ago it held something darker. Not as loudly remembered as Chelmsford trials or Canewdon's legends, but just as stained by fear. There are whispers, quiet ones, that accuse witches were buried here. Like in Southminster, the dead were not granted rest in holy ground. Instead, the stories say they were laid at crossroads, a common practice meant to confuse a spirit, to scatter it, and to prevent it from coming home. Some believe one such site still exists just outside the old town boundary, where two country lanes meet beneath a leaning oak. No signs, no stone, just the feeling, the kind of stillness that makes your skin rise and your breaths shallow. They say a woman in black walks the road at twilight, not always, but sometimes. The grave may be long forgotten, but the tale lingers. Burnham on Croce sits at the heart of witchfinder territory, and it wasn't untouched by the panic. In the mid-1600s, while Matthew Hopkins and his associates were conducting their brutal interrogations, women from the surrounding marshlands were taken and accused, healers, widows, and midwives, people who knew the language of herbs, or who simply lived alone. Not everyone made it to trial. Some died in holding, some simply vanished, their names erased. Like that Joan that you couldn't find any information on.
Right, exactly.
Their homes were sold off and their bodies buried quietly where no one would even think to look. Even now, the town carries odd little superstitions. Old sailors won't fish near certain bends in the river after dark. There's one long-standing belief that if you see a murder of crows gathered at the old boathouse, someone is about to die. And every few years, a new visitor swears they've seen a woman staring out from the marsh.
Maria!
Right.
In the fens!
Yeah. Eyes black as the estuary, mouth moving as if whispering a name you used to know. Burnham isn't loud with its lore, but it hums low and steady, a kind of grief soaked into the reeds, a kind of memory that seeps up from the mud. The witches of Essex didn't all burn. Some were simply buried and forgotten.
Yeah.
But here, where the tides rise and fall like breath, the path still walks the shores.
I was just asking Google, like, what were some specific accounts of, like, trials in Southminster? So it says, well, records detail extensive witch trials through Essex, UK between 1560 and 1700. There is limited information specifically mentioning witch trials in Southminster. However, some information does point to the Malden area, which includes Southminster, as a site of witchcraft accusations and trials, and this includes individuals like Alice Chandler and Ellen Smith. Both were hanged for witchcraft, and Ellen confessed to bewitching a child, and Marjorie Staunton escaped punishment due to a wrongly drafted indictment. In addition, it's worth noting that Essex had more witchcraft accusations and executions than any other English county, according to Malden Nub News. And while details specifically naming Southminster are scarce, it's highly probable that some accusations and trials occurred in the village, given its location within Essex, a hotbed of witchcraft hysteria during this period.
But thank you, Claire, for pointing us in that direction. That is really, I love a little spooky tale, a little spooky location. So thanks.
Same.
Diamonds!
Diamonds!
For her.
Yeah. And I love how, like, included was that little bit about the woman wandering the marsh. Like, what?
Yeah. All right, Alice.
Wild. So now that we've talked a little bit about Southminster, we're going to move on over to another place in Essex, Canewdon. So this is specifically, we're going to move over to the Witches of Essex documentary. This was the one I was talking about earlier. It's free on Tubi. We will link it in our show notes. Definitely go watch this. It's definitely, I wouldn't say it's like a spooky watch, but like it is cozy. It's just like this little old man and like his little hat and cane, and he's just wandering the English countryside telling you stories of witchcraft in different churches.
I love it.
Beautiful old architecture in churches. It's probably some of the most ancient like architecture, these old buildings that are still standing from the 1600s, sometimes 1400s. Like, it's crazy how these buildings have stood the test of time, and the legends that we're about to talk about have also stood the test of time. And I love talking about all this stuff.
Me too.
Spooky Yuki's season's coming right up, so this is perfect to get us in the mood for that.
Little sample.
Yeah, a little morsel. if you will. Hosting this documentary is paranormal investigator Chris Halton, and Chris Halton embarks on a journey to discover the myth and the legend behind the Witches of Essex. This paranormal documentary tries to uncover why Essex is historically associated with witches and black magic, a belief largely generated by superstitious country folk whose fear of the devil led to the persecution of many people. The beginning of this documentary starts off very eerily. It's like very eerie, like it's just sepia tone, and he's just kind of like wandering through fields and graveyards and like cobblestone and like the English countryside, and it's just like this very spooky music and church bells, like you hear kind of like, and it's a trip. Um, but then he arrives at this old church. And the documentary starts in Canewdon at the Church of St. Nicholas, which has a nefarious reputation for witchcraft. It's one of the most actively infested areas for witchcraft in the entire world. The origins of Canewdon dates back to Saxon times and means Hill of Canner's people. King Canute, on his campaigns across England, had a base camp nearby and might have well used the tower of this church for its great views across the area's great valleys and hills. Located in the Rochford district of the Crouch Estuary, the village is sited on the highest hill of coastal Essex. Its name derives from the Saxon meaning Hill of Canna's people. Oh, I said that already. Local tradition has it that a camp near the village was used by Canute during the Battle of Sandon. Even today, Canewdon has a lonely feel to it. Surrounded by the mudflats and marshes of the Thames estuary, it is easy to imagine how isolated and insular the community must have been in the past. Dominating the village is the 14th century parish church St. Nicholas. The church stands on a ridge overlooking the River Crouch, its most striking feature being the 15th century tower, which was built to commemorate Henry V's victory at
Look at you!
I'm
Look at
learning.
you!
I'm learning. Henry V's victory at Agincourt?
Have,
Agincourt?
have you seen the Essex Serpent yet?
No, but I I found it in my, was it Apple? Is it
Yeah, I think it's an Apple TV.
Apple TV? Yeah, it's on the watch list. So yeah,
Watch,
definitely.
yeah, watch it. It's got a little spookiness to it. But it takes place in these fens, in these marshes near the ocean, and I was a little spooked in the beginning. Yeah, not gonna
I
lie.
love that. I'm definitely gonna check that one out. So when you mention witches, right, most people, especially witches in the UK anyway, most people would immediately think of the Pendle witches and the Berwick and of course Salem witches of New England in the United States. And I was like gonna start to like go down the Pendle witch rabbit hole because my family was supposed to take a UK trip this past summer, and then
Hmm.
like the planes started crashing and stuff, so we were like, all right, maybe we'll hold off for now. But when we were doing some research on where to visit in UK, I was like, well, if we're going all the way to UK, I want to see my ass some witch shit,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
So, and then as was doing the research, the Pendle witch case was one of the big ones that was coming up. But then I was like looking into it for this episode, and it didn't take place in Essex.
Mm,
It's in another
totally
whole
separate
other,
thing.
yeah, separate place in the
Bummer.
UK, which is huge, by the way. UK is freaking huge. So I didn't veer too much down that rabbit hole, but that's one of the big ones that people mostly think of when you think of like UK witches,
Okay.
witchcraft is the
Mhm.
Pendle witch. But very few would name Canewdon to be a hotbed of witchcraft, to be honest. Most people who live in Essex have never even heard of it.
Hmm.
And this is probably due to the fact that it had no sensational witch trials which could capture the public's imagination. Like the Salem witch trials was huge because it was like this whole hysteria thing. Canewdon wasn't that. The village was not even visited during Matthew Hopkins's witch hunts. He was actually scared to visit this place.
Oh my God.
Okay? Yeah.
Okay.
So that just goes to show you, like, whatever Matthew Hopkins was doing, he knew he was cornering innocent people because he would
Mm.
not fuck with the real witches,
Got it. Got
you
it.
know?
Hmm.
So yeah, he did not even visit, not even attempt Canewdon. So it is hard to imagine that if the connection between the village and witchcraft practice was as deeply rooted as folk memory claims, how it managed to escape Hopkins's attention. There are a number of possibilities. Maybe land travel was too difficult due to the extremely isolated nature of the place. Maybe the village was too poor to afford Hopkins's services, and because I guess it was mostly the towns that were paying for Hopkins to come in and raid the villages for witches, you know?
Unreal.
Political as fuck, but that's what happened. A lot of these villages wanted to attack widows or, you know, women in general for owning land. That's basically what it was.
The
Land.
greater good. It's like an HOA on steroids. It's like we
Yes.
got to clean up this town and get rid of these spinsters.
Yes, that's exactly what it was. But yeah, I guess they're saying that maybe Canewdon was too poor and small of an isolated community for them to be able to afford to have Matthew Hopkins come in. That's also a theory, but some say that he was actually scared to go there.
Okay, I like
Yeah,
that one
so
better.
yeah, me too. It says maybe the Witchcraft Association does not go back as far as many people believe. Was the link so strong that the villagers did not want outside interference and that witchcraft was silently accepted, or were the witches considered too powerful to risk offending? And that little bit comes from hauntedpalaceblog.com. It's a great read. If you go to this blog, there was a lot more about Canewdon specifically and all of that stuff, but we're gonna go into the documentary a little more now. We'll link that one in our show notes though, so you guys can go down that rabbit hole if you want to. So as long as the church tower stands, going back to the Church of St. Nicholas in Canewdon, it says as long as the church tower stands, there will always be witches in Canewdon, and that's the old Essex saying. And Canewdon, perched on a hill with views over the Crouch estuary, wears its haunted reputation like a crown. Stories stretch back centuries of witches whose shadows were said to appear without their bodies, church bells ringing on their own, a woman in white seen wandering the path between the church and the village hall, said to be the ghost of a witch who swore vengeance after her execution. Even into the 20th century, locals were hesitant to discuss certain families rumored to descend from witches, believing they still had, quote, the sight, right, the cunning. A repeated tale is that if you run around the church at midnight, a witch will appear. Don't, but also maybe do if you're into the Bloody Mary kind of thing, you know? Right. Yeah. So there are some examining court records and testimonials in the village of Canewdon. The first is the trial of 1585, which was the trial of Rose Pye. Rose Pye was a local spinster who appeared before the court because she was accused of bewitching a 12-month-old baby by the name of Joanna Snow. She bewitched the baby to death. Joanna Snow lived at nearby Scoldhurst Farm. The court showed leniency because the evidence to convict Rose was too insufficient. So although she was acquitted, she actually did die in prison because she was unable to pay her release fee. Yeah. 5 years later, after the trial of Rose Pye in 1585, a lady by the name of Cicely Macon, or Goodwife Macon, or like from Goody Macon, they would have called her in Salem probably. Goody Wife Macon also appeared before the court here because she was charged with practicing witchcraft. Like with Rose Pye, they showed a degree of leniency with Cicely as well. They actually gave her 5 years to return back to the teachings of Christ. However, after those 5 years, Cicely was like, nah, fuck that. And she was back before the same court, who decided that instead of her being executed, imprisoned, or tortured, Cicely should just be excommunicated from the church. So by the standards, this sounds like all good and well, right? But by the standards of medieval England, this meant that her soul was definitely going to hell, okay?
So you could say she wanted to dance, not make her confirmation.
Exactly. And she wanted to live deliciously.
That's right.
Right, she did. And dance she did. And she went and lived out her life peacefully in the countryside.
Good for her.
Yeah, she said, nah, fuck your church.
Yeah.
I'm gonna live deliciously with Black Phillip, and that's it. That's the rest of my life. And they didn't bother her, though. They didn't.
I love that for
bother her. They showed her leniency, and she was like, okay, this is my life. I'm a witch.
Awesome.
And yeah, they never bother her again. So after these two trials, there appears to be no further records indicating that any other citizens of this village were brought to trial because they were accused of witchcraft. So there are some legends of Canewdon, witchcraft legends specifically, and Canewdon is particularly known for its legends associated with these witchcraft rituals that are connected with the Church of St. Nicholas. It is alleged that should a stone fall from the tower of this church, it would indicate that one of the 6 witches inside the village had died, and that another was due to take their place. Adding to this legend, so long as the church tower stands, there will always be witches in the village. Apparently, anyone who walks around the tower at midnight could be forced to dance with the witches. On Halloween, if you go around the tower 7 times, you will see a witch. If you go around 13 times, you'll become invisible.
With the witch?
I hope
You get the
that
witch
would be
too?
fun.
Is it like our Patreon? You get all the tiers below?
If you're on the rose tier, yeah, you get the invisibility cloak. Yeah. If you're on the wisteria vine, you get to the devil will appear before you. This says if you run around the tower counterclockwise, the devil will appear before you. If you run around the tower backwards 3 times, a portal will appear before you, and Billy Zane will pop out asking if he's late for the summer solstice. And you will travel back in time. That sounds like a good time. I would sign up for that Patreon tier. These are just legends. There are no actual accounts or claims from anyone who have actually had any of these experiences inside the churchyard at Canewdon. So I'm thinking like, this is like kid fodder, like kids make this shit up to perpetuate these myths like, oh, Bloody Mary, or like, if I dare you to go run around the clock tower 3 times backwards, so stuff like that. So there's no actual accounts or claims that anybody has experienced any of these things. This is just like hearsay and, kiddie legends. And there is a rhyme that says that there will always be 6 witches in the village, 3 of cotton and 3 of silk. The narrator of this documentary says, if this were a medieval saying, it wouldn't have been cotton, it would have been wool, because cotton was a discovery of the 19th century during the era of George Pickingill, which is who we're going to talk about now. So George Pickingill was born in 1813 and died in the village. So a little more modern than the 1600s accounts of witchcraft. It is believed that he is buried somewhere in the churchyard of St. Nicholas, but without a headstone. He was known as a cunning man and allegedly practiced worship to a horned god. During his lifetime, although he was employed as a farm worker, many people would go to him for cures for many ailments and warts and to improve crops. He would either make potions or do spells for those who sought out his help, and it is said that he walked along a hedgerow and touched it with a stick, where the animals would run out, and then they could be easily captured and caught for gain. It was said that if anyone crossed swords with George, their prosperity in life could be severely hampered by what George could do in the matter of witchcraft and wizardry. It was also said that if you went to his cottage just on the outskirts of his village and looked for the window during the evening time, you can see his familiars in the form of mice suckling his nipples, and all manner of weird and wonderful cows associated with this man were researched by a writer of folklore named Eric Maple. In the 1970s, an American by the name of Lefebvre, spelled Lefebvre, added more to the reputation of George Pickingill. George was a person that liked to rewrite the rituals of his worship to his horned god. He was also a man who was known to make some fairly grand statements. He claimed that he had 9 covens across the county of Essex and even neighboring counties such as Hertfordshire, and legend has it, on one occasion, he had a showdown with another witch where he struck this witch dead with his magic.
That's a lot of responsibility. 9 covens?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was running a coven.
Monopoly.
Yeah, like a pyramid scheme or something. Ponzi
scheme.
Yeah. He was a man to be feared, and the villagers, and especially the church, feared him greatly. He claimed that he could sit quietly smoking a pipe while he would employ imps to bring in the crops from the farmer's field, and that farmers would pay him extra money to perform these miracles on their behalf. There are rumors that Aleister Crowley was at one time a disciple of George Pickingill, and that he was thrown out of the sect for his behavior, which was considered to be outside of their teachings or practices. However, researchers in later years could find no evidence of any connection between Crowley and Pickingill. And as time goes on, the legends of George Pickingill seem to perpetuate, which today has given rise to the fact that Canewdon is regarded as a focal point of witchcraft in the county of Essex. George had a grudge against the church and had many run-ins with local priests, and there are claims that he was walking through the churchyard at night in Canewdon when he saw daylight from behind a stone cross in the cemetery, which reflected upon him and struck him dead
Oh. That
This
ended
legend
abruptly.
Yeah. Yeah, the end. This legend has been severely exaggerated. He actually fell ill at home and was taken to hospice where he eventually died of old age. So that was just
Okay.
like that's just a myth that I guess has been perpetuated to I guess make his whole story more fascinating or I
A
don't
lot more
know.
colorful.
Exactly, like elaborating on it a little more. So the Church of St. Nicholas at Canewdon has two ghostly legends attached to it. The first one is a lady wearing a poke bonnet who has no face, and it is the most notorious legend, and it has been seen on a number of occasions. She has been seen passing through the west gate in the car park at the front of the church and disappeared down before the river. On one night, a lady was parked outside, and she had no knowledge of the church's ghostly reputations. When she saw the apparition, she actually saw that it had no facial features, and she was petrified, fled the church, and never returned again. There's also an alleged headless ghost, a la Washington Irving, that has been seen inside the churchyard, who has been known to deposit its victims into neighboring ditches.
Oh, dang.
Yeah, and apparently there have been many rituals performed in the St. Nicholas churchyard. It didn't he didn't specify like what kind of rituals, like witchcraft rituals, because when I searched what kind of rituals were performed in St. Nicholas churchyard, a lot that was coming up was like priests, I guess, like I don't know, initiating people into the priesthood or like something like that.
Okay.
I don't know what kind of witchcraft rituals have taken place here.
Got it.
Yeah. And then moving on to another location in Canewdon. Actually, wait, I don't think this one's Canewdon. This is the Boot House, a timber frame building in the village of Felsted in Essex, which was built by George Boot in 1596. Felsted is known for its public square. The building has an interesting detail known locally as the Felsted Hag. According to the builder, George Boot, it depicts a carving of his wife. She was a rather plain and ugly woman who he decided to display more. He displayed this more as a joke.
Okay.
Like, could you imagine Avi or Garen putting a carving of one of us outside of our house as a joke because they thought we were plain and ugly? I would murder.
Ugly. It's like a little statue figure.
Yeah.
It's like he had to do a lot of work to get her to look like that.
She not
purposefully.
She's not cute.
Okay.
What did I say? She not. You see that picture, right? She's
Go
not.
on. Yes.
So if you look more closely at this figure, it's actually just a support bracket. But you'll notice that she has cloven feet, exposed breasts, which kind of reminds me of like the womanly figure at the bow of a ship, kind of like put there to ward off negative or evil entities.
Yeah.
Yes, so she appears to be restrained or held back, contained on the side of this building. And they were called grotesques, like gargoyles or like, something of that sort. Or what do we talk about? Not the boo.
What were those things called?
You remember what I'm talking
They had
about?
a funky name, the hoobity boogity.
Yeah, we talked about it, I think, in our sluts episode, right?
Oh you found it. I don't remember what they were called.
Yeah, I can't remember it either. It's on the tip of my tongue. Not a boo hag. Something. Fuck!
I can't remember
it. All right, we'll come back to that.
Sheila and a gig.
Sheila and a gig. Yes.
Gig.
Where did you pull that out of?
I don't know.
Amazing.
You blasted it into my brain.
A Sheila and a gig. That's right. So basically a grotesque to ward off evil. So in 1593, if we go back a few years earlier, Alice Albert, a 59-year-old local spinster, was declared to be a witch. According to a local farmer, she had hexed a number of his animals, which fell ill and died. She had apparently bewitched them. In order to retaliate, the farmer complained to the local magistrate there, who issued a warrant for her arrest, and she was taken to Chelmsford Diocese, where she was judged guilty of witchcraft and hung along with a number of other innocent women. She was probably also tortured a great length, which may have caused her to have admitted anything at all, like we were talking about earlier, that coercion tactic that they would use to just get out some kind of confession so they can have a reason to kill more people. And the story doesn't end there. Chris Halton, the narrator of this documentary, explains how he came here to shoot a piece on the George Boot House and some of the other buildings as well as the church. As he was carrying his camera across the road to get a better view of the George Boot House, he was standing in a central position where he recorded the most unusual EVP. And in the documentary, you can hear this EVP. It sounds like static hissing, and if you listen closely, the background audio is completely wiped out, and it's substituted by what sounds like a very evil-sounding voice. A number of voice analysts have listened to this at great length and have declared that they can find no logical explanation for that voice to be there. And could there be an association between that EVP, the legend of the George Boot House, and the poor spinster Alice Albert? Perhaps it's just speculation, but perhaps Alice Albert's spirit still wanders this part of the village of Felsted. And the Felsted hag and the legend of Alice Albert still fascinate many tourists that come to this area.
I love that.
Yeah.
Oh, man, I'm sure there's spooky stuff like that around here, hub of the Civil War and whatever, but that's pretty dope.
It's cool.
That is cool.
Yeah, you gotta hear that, the EVP. There's a couple different EVP things that pop up through this whole documentary.
Cool.
So creepy.
I'm gonna check it out. Let's discuss Matthew Hopkins a little more, Witchfinder General of the 17th century, who serial murdered over 300 innocent women with his assistant, Mr. Stern. Hopkins was the son of a Puritan priest who was born in Great Wenham in Suffolk in the year 1620, following the death of his father, who was quite a wealthy man, owning tenants at Framingham Castle in Suffolk. He came to the area with 100 marks. I wonder how much that is today. As part of his father's will, where he purchased the Mistlethorne Hotel. Today, there is still a Mistlethorne Hotel, but unfortunately, it's not the original building that Hopkins purchased. It was torn down before a later version was built in 1735. While Hopkins was here, he came across a witchcraft trial that was being prosecuted at the behest of villages by a man named John Stern. Hopkins appeared at the trial and listened to how Stern presented his evidence. At that point, he decided to throw his lot in with Stern to carry out their own investigations into witchcraft. It was plainly obvious that people weren't willing to pay for the deaths of other people. Before long, they formed a company which involved 3 professional witch identifiers, women who knew the signs of a witch. So these are women.
Yeah, it seems like these women were, I guess, accompanying him to help, I guess.
You know what that's given.
Pick me girl?
That's given the Speaker of the House, Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Yes.
And all of those. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Stern was employed as a witch pricker. By today's standards, they can be seen as psychopaths who had no feelings or remorse for their victims. They were handsomely rewarded not only to dispose of alleged witches by identifying them, but also innocent people that would pay good sums of cash for them to be rid of.
Yeah, so if you had a personal vendetta against someone, this is the perfect way to get rid of them.
This is original mob hit.
It's
stuff.
so fucked up. It's so fucked up. Yeah.
By the end of Hopkins' reign, he had accrued the sum of £1,000, which by modern standards would place him close to being a millionaire. So this was very profitable and very unethical of an exercise.
Which is why I'm saying he was so scared to go to Canewdon, right? Because they were real witches.
He didn't want to be canoodling with the Canewdon witches.
Yeah, exactly. So it's very clear to me that he was just doing this, just killing innocent people because he was making the money.
It was easy easy pickings with these people. This all occurred during the English Civil War. So there was no proper lawful jurisdiction by authorities because some could be under control of royalists, others could be under control of the parliamentarians. So Hopkins was able to work within this gray area and even had a letter of good conduct to allow him through 2 different areas in order to carry out his alleged persecution of witches. It is believed by the end of his reign that he had murdered over 300 women and some men too. On one occasion, he persecuted an elderly priest. Most of his victims were poor, elderly widows, easy victims to torture and to confess to alleged crimes. As a result of their persecution, they would receive a financial settlement from the grateful villages. The reasons behind this mostly was that the Great Plague existed around this time, and there were a number of ailments and diseases affecting livestock, which could all be attributed to the work of a witch. Science was still very much in its infancy, particularly with medicine. So if someone or their animals fell ill, it had to be witchcraft. There was no actual testimony from any of the prosecutions that any of these animals or people recovered from their alleged ailments as a result of the witch being persecuted and tried. The person never got better even after the witch supposedly was killed. That didn't cure the person. 19 women had been persecuted and hung in Manningtree. All of these women were completely innocent of any crime of alleged witchcraft. In the early days, in the year of 1645, most of Hopkins' early victims were tried by water at the infamous Hopping Bridge. We talked about this in our water episode, the dunk test, the swimming test, which
Mm-hmm.
all can be still seen today along the walls at Mistley. Here, victims were tied to chairs and thrown over the side into the pond below. If they died, they were innocent. If they floated back to the surface, they were guilty as a witch. They were then taken to Colchester, where they were tried and hung. Today, in the castle basement, still reside a number of cells where these poor women were incarcerated. It was cold and damp, and the victims here would be stripped naked and beaten. I'm gonna just harken back to our Salem trip. When we were that
Yeah,
last day,
I was
I
thinking that
did
too.
not like that. With all of those people, like you start
Hmm.
getting really dizzy, and I
Yeah,
was getting woozy.
it
I
was
don't know
so
about you.
disturbing. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was just give ick vibes. And I know it wasn't like, didn't they say it was a two scale replica, that whole basement? Like it wasn't the actual place where they were held. It was
Right,
like a
right.
just a replica, but even still, like it gave like ick vibes. Like
The
I didn't like it
realization,
at all.
like size and scale of that many
Mhm.
people. Like how
Yeah.
many, maybe 60 people were in there. And they said like where we went for our
Mhm.
tour, that I
There's
think there could they said there could have been way more at the time being held there captive,
Yeah.
for trial.
And on top of that, think of like all like the urine and the feces and like
Oh
the
yeah.
stuff in the rats and like all the stuff like on the ground, like where you're trying to like,
Mhm.
and you had to pay extra to be able to have somewhere to sit down,
Right.
right?
Right.
Otherwise, you were chained to a wall in a stall that's big as like a shower,
Right.
like a
You're
gym
standing
shower.
up.
Yeah,
Other
right.
signs Hopkins used to tell if someone was a witch were if people had warts or moles, an extra nipple, could all be considered the mark of the devil.
Hmm.
So some methods employed to extract confessions and prove guilt were some were using a blunt knife placed against the arm. The blunt knife would not cut their skin or draw blood, or they would use a knife with a retractable blade so it appeared to pass through the victim's arm and be retracted with no trace of blood or damage to the skin. Ooh, tricky. These were
They
both
had those
sure
back then?
signs of witchcraft. Like magic?
Right.
Like,
It's like one of those trick knives, you know?
yes. Yeah.
I had no idea those were like a thing back in the day, but
I'm
oh
trying to think
man,
like what you would use that for. Maybe in like, did they have plays
like
and
a
like
magic
theater
show?
back then?
I don't know. But
Yeah.
that's fucked up.
Well, if like Robbie during that time, like the character Hannah, not Hannah,
Oh,
Rebecca's husband, I'm
right.
thinking like maybe stage acting, you could use
Yeah.
that. I don't know, like Shakespearean plays.
But
Wait,
that's pretty
that was
messed up.
when was
Shakespeare, was
Shakespeare?
that like 1400s? Was he earlier?
Mallory, help.
Yeah. We'll have to I need a lifeline.
Yeah.
Call
It is
Mallory.
It is believed that Hopkins drew his inspiration from the works of King James I, who wrote a book on demonology. It was also suggested that for a period he was employed as a clerk in Holland, where he learned many methods of detecting witches. All of his victims were hung, only one was burnt at the stake. Burning at the stake was a fairly new commonplace practice throughout Europe. Why didn't Hopkins visit Canewdon in Essex? Many suggest that he was just too terrified of the witches there.
Yeah, sounded like he didn't actually have the balls to deal with them real witches. He had to suss out innocent people.
Unreal.
Is King James the same guy that wrote the Bible? The Bible? The King
I'll,
James? Isn't there a
I'll
King
say
James
yeah.
Bible?
There is, yes.
So you're wait, so King James has a Bible, but he's also got a book on demonology?
Oh, yeah. You gotta play both fields, make your money both ends.
I guess so.
The Discovery of Witches. This is now a show, isn't it? Or it was like a
Yes.
documentary?
Well, it was actually a fictional book series, like a modern fictional book series. I'm
Mm-hmm.
guessing it was inspired. I don't know if it was inspired by the work of Matthew Hopkins, but it was basically turned into a show. It was pretty good. I mean, I watched the first few episodes. I didn't dive that too far down. But those books are pretty chunky.
Okay.
So I think I started trying to read it on audiobook and then I kept falling asleep, so I just stopped. But I don't think that it has anything to do with this Discovery of Witches by Matthew Hopkins, which is like
Okay.
old book,
Old
right?
book, yeah.
Yeah.
Written, a historical account written in the mid 17th century during a time when the witch trials were prevalent in England. The book serves as justification for Hopkins' controversial methods in identifying witches, which he argued were both necessary and effective for the sake of public safety. It primarily focuses on the practice and beliefs surrounding witchcraft, particularly examining the role of confessions and the technique used to detect witches. In this text, Hopkins responds to the numerous queries about his witch-finding practices, defending his actions against accusations of cruelty and incompetence. He discusses his experiences in identifying witches, including the use of physical examination to find marks of witchcraft, such as teats on the body. These are just nasty old men looking for an excuse to feel up any woman.
Yeah.
Any woman. They're disgusting.
Yeah.
Throughout the book, he recounts specific cases detailing how suspected witches were discovered and examined, their confessions, and the common realizations for their actions. The work highlights the tumultuous nature of witch hunts and sheds light on the societal fears and misconceptions regarding witchcraft during this period. Hopkins seeks to validate his methods while discrediting challenges to his authority, ultimately portraying him as a protector of the community against malign forces. Sounds fucking familiar. Hopkins wrote this.
Fucking A, man.
I know. History repeating again.
Fuck.
He wrote this discovery of witches in 1647, which he used in his defense against the priests John Gore at Great Stoughton in Huntingdonshire, who denounced him as a witch. Huntingdon was perhaps Hopkins' last final battle. So I guess it got to the point when he started like accusing priests of being witches. They were like, hang on.
Yeah. And John Gore, I guess, was like the big boss, and he was like,
He's the
all right,
final boss.
I don't think I could take this guy. I think I'm just gonna back up into the bush like Homer Simpson. Fucking Matthew Hopkins.
What an ass. So regarding his death, Hopkins was forced to retreat, suffering from an illness of a chest infection. He went back to his home in Manningtree in South Street, which today is an empty lot next to a Red Line public house. Okay, so you can go, if you want to go pee on this location, go ahead. I want to go cast a little hexen. Where he died of his illness. Within hours, Hopkins had been buried in the ground of Mislead Church, which no longer exists today. As a result, it is not possible to say exactly where Hopkins has been interred. After his death, the discovery of witches was taken by the early settlers to the town of Salem, Massachusetts, where it was used in another reign of terror in the Salem witch trials of 1692.
That is so problematic that he released a book filled with so much hate that it transcended even his death. That was his legacy, that he left that mark on the world, and then other people in turn use that book to repeat the same fucking terror, which is why I'm like, whatever's going on today,
kind of like the Bible,
it's just keeps perpetuating itself. It's so horrible that so many people live in that much fear that they have to keep it going.
Is this Project 2025 going to be that new discovery of witches?
That's what it feels like.
Yep, sure does. Yeah. Hopkins not only lives on through his publications, but through the form of his ghost. Some say he can be seen at Hopping Bridge, walking along the walls area facing the river. Also, ghostly and mysterious screams can be heard coming across from the soft marsh, like a fen.
Like the fens,
which is believed to be the spirit of some of his victims. He also has been heard inside the Misley Thorne Hotel on the upper floors, walking up and down like a restless spirit. There have also been sightings of him at the White Hart Hotel in Manningtree.
Do you think his ghost feels any remorse? Do you think it's a tortured soul? Do you think he's wandering around like, man, I really fucked up with my life? Or do you think he's walking around being like, man, I should have gotten that last witch before I bit
the latter. I think the latter.
Yeah, probably. You're probably right, motherfucker.
Yeah.
They're all a bunch of motherfuckers. All right, moving on. We're going to talk about St. Edmund's Church now. So, located on the island of Mersey in Essex, the eastern side of the island, there's another church at the western end. This is St. Edmund's Church, and this has quite a bit of an interesting history. It took over 200 years to construct and dates from the 12th, 13th, 14th, and 15th centuries, respectively. This church is a testament to the craftsmanship of its medieval past, but it has a light and airy ambiance. So it's kind of like an oxymoron, right? It's like dark medieval past, but it's like, oh, it's so light and airy.
It's kind of like Salem.
Yeah.
Look at this fun town.
It's a good time. After the fact, right?
Yeah.
This church holds the legend of Sarah Wrench. This is one of the most unusual yet also saddest burials in this churchyard. And if you look at this picture that I added below, there is an iron cage over her grave, I guess, it's not even a headstone, it's like a plaque, right? Like a flat plaque with
Yeah,
her
yeah,
death date and birth date.
yeah. Hmm.
Actually, no, it doesn't even have a birth date. I don't think it had a birth date. It says nobody actually knows who Sarah Wrench was, as there's no record of her birth. But in those days, it was not particularly unusual. I don't think they kept great records back then, especially in a rural area like this.
Yeah. And even
Yeah.
at like the birthday sometimes was tied to the closest holiday. You know what I
Mm.
mean? It wasn't even their actual birthday. It was just, or their name day, you know?
Right. So it is an iron cage grave. Sarah Wrench died May 6th, 1848, and she was only 15 years old. 15 years old and 5 months. She's buried alone in an unconsecrated grave. So I'm guessing that means not holy grounds,
Not
right? It wasn't
blessed.
that
Yeah.
was not blessed by a priest, or somebody of the clergy. Nobody actually knows who Sarah Wrench was, as there is no record of her birth. Yes, and in those days it wasn't particularly unusual. So for a burial to take place here in East Mersey for somebody from Peldon, with there being no record of her birth or death, it seems a bit odd. A lot of people believe that this grave had this iron cage or mort safe placed over it to prevent a group of people known as the resurrectionists or the Burkers from removing her body and selling it for medical research. So these resurrectionists, Burkers, they're basically grave robbers.
Hmm.
So they would remove a body from its grave, sell it for medical research to a medical school either in London or Cambridge, which would have been the nearest for that period of history. They would have received a bountiful price for her corpse. Sarah was a native of Peldon Village, which in those days would have taken 40 minutes by horse or cart. If it were a grave robber, he would have had to have known that she recently died, and he would also had to have known where she had been buried for him to even dream of removing the corpse. Then taking it to the nearest rail station would have been around 2 to 3 hours. And then let's take into consideration the long journey into London, having to explain to people why they're carrying a cadaver of a young girl. Does this sound familiar?
Is this our Maria's Island episode? But if the math isn't mathing, explain to me.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, could the girls have gotten on a ferry with a car? Yes, but they would have had to explain Jimmy's body in the back seat, right?
Exactly.
It's the same math. So then, of course, if you were a resident of Mersey Island, you would have to know somebody in medical school in London who would be prepared to break the law and buy this corpse. It was also suggested by the locals that Sarah was a witch, which could have also been the reason that she was buried in an iron cage to prevent her from rising again and tormenting the locals, especially probably since she's buried on unconsecrated ground and maybe she's a demon now. Who the fuck knows what's going on in the afterlife?
Right.
But, not an angel, probably, if it's unholied ground. So the whole mystery surrounding her death and also the grave robbers is just a disturbing notion when you examine them under a modern microscope. For example, between 1506 and 1752, there was great interest in human anatomy by medical schools, where the supply of cadavers or human bodies that they would use for research had dried up. So they decided to introduce a piece of legislation, which was known as the Murder Act, which allowed convicted felons who were executed as part of their punishment for their bodies to be taken away for free by medical schools for their medical classes. So my thought is, since these convicted felons, aka these witches who are, being persecuted, tried, and hanged, did Matthew Hopkins have some kind of deal with these medical schools? Like, if he is able to, kill off as many of these people, he's making bank. Their medical schools are making bank.
Yeah, very probable.
What we said before, it's a fucking Ponzi scheme. They had some kind of mob, I don't know, some kind
System,
of
hierarchy.
system going on. Exactly. So it just makes me go, All right. So as the interest in medical science grew in Edinburgh and London, the supply of convicted bodies grew less and less because at the same time, it reflected a social change in society. No longer were people going to be executed for the most minor of offenses. The only course for further action to enable them to continue their business was to employ or do business with these people known as the resurrectionists or the Burkers. Burker, the name, comes from Mrs. Burke and Hare, who were Irish immigrants living in Edinburgh who murdered up to 16 people between 1827 and 1828. They murdered people to sell their bodies to an unscrupulous doctor at Edinburgh Medical School. It didn't say what the doctor's name was, but I'm sure if you do enough digging, you probably could find it. These bodies were taken by the medical school without question. So they didn't even want to know where these bodies came from. They were like, yeah, just give us the bodies.
Okay.
Yeah. So Wild West, right? There's no laws in place. It's just the Wild West out there. They're just kill the people, give me the bodies. We just need to do our research in the name of science. When they were eventually caught and convicted / executed, no punishment was dealt out to the doctors involved at the medical practices, only to the Burkers, the resurrectionist grave robbers. Burke, when he was executed, his skeleton was placed on display, his corpse was dissected, and book covers were made from his skin.
Stop.
And so were appointment cards and folders.
Oh, appointment cards?
So, just go to your local CVS and get some skin cards. I don't know.
Okay.
After Burke and Hare were arrested and convicted, there was a huge landslide in change with regard to the care of bodies after death. Up until then, no one really gave it a second thought, like what happened to these bodies after death, or even after the burial. After they brought in legislation, they decided that in all future deaths, all deaths should be properly registered with certificates to accompany each corpse to ensure that those who had control over the corpse had the correct paperwork giving them the authorization to do so. So I'm guessing like on your driver's license when you check off organ donor, like you're giving them permission to do what they want to do with your body after you die. I've even heard some rumors that like you shouldn't check off organ donor because then they don't try to save you like if something happened. I've heard that
too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it sounded like if you gave them permission, then they would sell your body to science or research. But other than that, I guess at that point it became illegal to, do the Burker resurrectionist gig on the side. So this basically cut out the middleman. So no longer the grave robber who would remove these bodies for sale. They were no longer able to do that. So in 1848, in East Mersey, life was fairly harsh, and it was mostly farmers and people who made their living from the sea. And they were landowners, but they were not particularly wealthy. So this begs the question, in a forgotten corner of the United Kingdom, at this churchyard at St. Edmund's Church, why would anyone want to place a mort safe over a young girl's grave? Mm-hmm. So viewing this through a modern lens, it's easy to see that Sarah Wrench was not a witch. She was a victim of a narrowed societal mentality which pervaded England at the time. According to facts, she was indeed pregnant, allegedly, and it is believed that she could have been confronted by her village over her pregnancy, and maybe she didn't want to name the father of the child. And so maybe she lied. She could have said something to the effect that maybe she had been raped by a demon or something to that extent that would kind of like, stir people up in fear, and then like yell witch or something. In 1848, despite the witchcraft trials of the 17th century, people still here, and particularly in Essex, had these deep-rooted fears of the devil that completely possessed the minds of most Christians that lived in these remote rural districts.
How fascinating.
Right? And that whole section, like, I completely didn't put that in last night. I was like, I should have put that in. That was like pretty cool shit. So then that brings us to the last witch trial of Essex. And this occurred in the 1860s in the village of Sybil Hendingham. In this instance, the villagers decided that a deaf mute was believed to be a French man by the name of Dummy, and that he was a witch. And I guess that's a nickname that they gave him. I hope his parents didn't name him that.
I don't think so. Yeah.
He was tried by being doused in water, and as a result, this poor man caught pneumonia and died. And this shows that this mentality surrounding the paranormal and the works of the devil still held very strongly in people's minds. So here's a little bit more that was not in the documentary about Dummy, the Witch of Sybil Hendingham. It says he was born around 1788, died September 4th, 1863, and that was the pseudonym of an unidentified elderly man. So they never give his actual real name. That's how he was known. And he was one of the last people to be accused of witchcraft in England in the 19th century. And he died after being beaten and thrown into a river by witch hunters.
God.
Yeah. A longtime resident of Sybil Hendingham, Essex, a small farming village in the English countryside, He was a deaf mute who earned a living as a local fortune teller. So okay, he did dabble in the magics.
But how's he telling the fortunes if he's a mute?
I don't know. Maybe he wrote it down like
This is like
like
Helen
a
Keller trying to predict the future.
a fortune cookie. I don't know. Maybe he wrote it down
Maybe.
and I don't
Okay.
know. That's a good question. In September 1863, Dummy was accused by Emma Smith from Ridgewell of cursing her with a disease and dragged from the Swan Tavern by a drunken mob. He was ordered to, quote, lift the curse. When Dummy did not, he was thrown into a nearby brook as an ordeal by water. He was also severely beaten with sticks before eventually being taken to a workhouse in Halstead, where he died of pneumonia. Following an investigation by authorities, Emma Smith and Samuel Stammers, who was a master carpenter and also friends with Smith, were charged with having, quote, unlawfully assaulted an old Frenchman commonly called Dummy, thereby causing his death. Okay, so they were punished for killing him.
Yeah, yeah.
So this was not the establishment. These were just a mob. This was just mob mentality, just killing off a resident of a person in the community. The idea that Dummy was French was common in the village, but there seemed to be little evidence of whether it was true. They were tried at Chelmsford Assizes, where on March 8th, 1864, they were sentenced to 6 months hard labor. That's all they got. They just got a slap on the wrist and was like, all right, do some hard labor and you're
Wow.
fine. You just killed a man, but here's some labor.
Wow. Okay.
Fucked up.
Don't like that.
Yeah. So that's the deal with that. James Morrell was born in Rochford, Essex, around 1781. In 1785, he was baptized and grew up as the seventh son of a seventh son. So big
Okay.
family.
Okay. But
Yeah,
that's like traditionally known as like that's got like some spooky metaphysical stuff around it. Seventh son of a seventh son.
that is very weird. That's like Mother Leeds and
It's
like
like
the
Solomon Seal shit.
wasn't remember the when we talked about the Jersey Devil, wasn't it like, oh, when Mother Leeds has like a 13th child, it's gonna be the devil. Remember when we talked about that on
I don't, I
our
got
holidays?
podcast brain.
Yeah.
Remember that.
That's just crazy. That's some crazy shit. So James Morrell, he had gifts that were pivotal for what he became later in life, a well-known cunning man. And he was alleged to have these gifts, which included healing powers, herbal remedies, divining for lost objects. Maybe he invented the Tony, turn around, find your four-leaf clover. He also dabbled in astrology, and he was a clairvoyant, and just to name a few of his spiritual gifts. In 1812, James became a cobbler and set up shop in Hadley, Essex. As his client base grew, his knowledge also grew, and many people, including the wealthy, would travel abroad to seek him out because of his acclaimed reputation as a seer and a cunning man. He possessed tremendous knowledge of herbal remedies, medicine, and astrology, and owned an extensive library of magical books and papers, and his library is said to have contained the works of Henry Cornelius Agrippa, we know that name, Michel Nostradamus, and William Lilly. Have you heard of William Lilly? I've
I
never
have
heard that.
not.
We'll have to
No.
look into that one. For his consultation room, he allegedly used the front room of his cottage, which stood with all types of herbs tied to the beams, slowly drying out. In the corner of the room, he had an extremely large wooden chest, which contained various texts and books relating to his craft as a cunning man. He also had a magical knife, a human skull, and a writing desk, and he had a large brass telescope to observe the people in his community. Okay, so this guy was a voyeur, it seemed like.
Is he Merlin? Yeah, a
Yes,
voyeur.
people.
That's so funny.
So this begs the question, was he a charlatan? Was he actually seeing these things in people's lives that he can like disclose to them during their readings and their
Mm,
sessions, or was he just spying on them and like gathered all this information about them, seeing what they were up to on a day-to-day basis using this large telescope?
a good
So
question.
yeah, so then when they came to him, he may have already had some details and notes pertaining to that individual, which he then could reveal to them and like shock value, like, oh my God, how did you know that? You know?
Wow.
Yeah. So this would surprise the person concerned, reinforcing their belief in him as a cunning man or a male witch. Which now, knowing that bit of information, it's like, okay, that's questionable. How cunning actually was he, you know?
Right, right.
So on a daily basis, Morel would be seen wandering around the town of Hadley or wandering through the ruins of the old castle, where he was seen muttering or whistling to himself as he walked along. People didn't fear him, though. People adored him because of his, quote, wiseness, his wisdom, and his creativity in the way that he could help people. Morel was a man who had deeply religious beliefs. He was a devout Christian, well-versed in the New Testament. He charged for his services, usually half a penny for curing warts and other simple herbal remedies, half a crown to break a spell cast by another witch, and the same one for his famous witch bottle spells. If he was asked to call upon the aid of high spirits, he would charge even more. He was described as a man, small in stature, but he had an aura of great authority. He had piercing blue eyes and a ruddy complexion, and when out in the village he wore a bob-tailed coat and a fashionable hard hat and always carried an umbrella. So was he Charlie Chaplin? Like, who was this guy?
He's an arbiter of taste.
He's an arbiter of taste. He was a married man, but also had up to 20 children.
Okay, arbiter of taste,
Holy
it in.
He's like Hugh Hefner up in here. Although no records can be verified to establish that as fact. He also had what he called a magical mirror. So, like a la Vincent's, right? That black scrying mirror that was passed down through the Owens lineage.
Right.
It was said it was something that he stared into as a seer to be able to draw more closely into a particular problem brought to him by a client. The mirror also served as a lost property finder. So maybe he like looked into it and said, Tony, turn around, like, you know? Through his divinations, he was able to see and locate missing items. As an astrologer, he was incredibly accurate. Many of his predictions did come true. He used what we would call today white magic, perhaps a predecessor to the modern Wiccan movement. And he had a talismanic copper bracelet with which he was able to detect evil of lying people. So let's talk a little bit about his witch bottles, because those are apparently were a hot commodity.
Okay.
They were made out of metal, cast by a local blacksmith. They weren't easy to make as they could break in the firing process. Their use around the town of Hadley was particularly effective. One famous case was a young girl who was barking like a dog. Morel diagnosed that she was suffering from witchcraft, so he heated up one of his witch's bottles in the fire, intending to give that sense of burning back to the person that was hexing this young girl. Legend has it that the bottle exploded in the hearth of the fire, and that following day, the witch, who was the sender of this evil upon this young girl, was found dead, half burnt by fire, and there was no trace of any fire even set.
Yo, how come that didn't show up in our spontaneous human combustion episode on fire?
Oh, yeah.
Interesting.
Right. That is interesting. And another story was that he killed a witch using his power of white magic against the evil force, which allegedly came from the village of, there it is again, Canewdon. And another story reports that Morel took to his deathbed, aware of his oncoming demise, informing his daughter to turn away the curate, for I be the devil's master, as be well knowed. Clergymen didn't bother me in the old time, they shan't now.
So he's the devil's master, but before he was claiming he's a very devout religious person, but religious to the devil.
Right. I'm wondering if he claimed to be religious to avoid persecution, and he claimed to work under the guise of Jesus Christ.
I'm just gonna say the devil's getting more shit done.
Is the devil a Virgo?
What? I love that TikTok you put on our reels or whatever. I like that guy in the devil outfit. He's so funny.
So funny. Yeah. So conversely, Maple recorded a story that in his final hours, Morel was visited by the local curate. Morel was frustrated by the latter's attempts to administer religious consolation, and eventually scared him off by shouting, I am the devil's master!
Were those his last words? Because damn.
So. Yeah, could you imagine going out like that?
That's dope.
That is insane. Yeah, so this priest, I guess a clergyman, was just trying to like help him, see him off, give him blessings, and he was like, no, fuck that. Get the fuck out of here.
You're doing it wrong.
Jesus, man. I don't want your shit. I'm the devil's master.
All right.
Not the devil is my master. I'm the devil's master. Don't get it twisted.
Yeah.
So fascinating. Right?
That is wild. I love
Isn't that
this.
that was a wild ride? The whole documentary is pretty cool. In light of that, I curated another list of relevant documentaries if anybody else wants to go down this rabbit hole of other witches in England. Not just, I don't think just Essex. There's like, oh God, so many
I
other
do.
trials,
Mm-hmm.
especially like the Pendle Witch thing that we were talking about before. Like that's a huge one. That's a popular one. That's not even in Essex. So they're all over the UK. It's just such a big area and ancient. Goes back so
Yeah.
much older than New England,
Yeah,
right?
for
Of like the
sure.
United States. So some of these documentaries, the first here's the Chelmsford Witch Trials, and this is a YouTube video which examines the largest witch trial in England, which took place in Chelmsford, Essex, in July 1645. I'm wondering if that was the one we were talking about before with
I
all
think
the
so.
Jones.
I think so. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Chelmsford,
Yeah.
because I couldn't pronounce it.
Interesting. So I'm wondering if I watched this documentary, if it would have more about Joan Connie or Cunny or whatever her name was. Remember, I was like, I couldn't find a lot on her. Maybe
Grandma
there's
Joan.
more. Maybe there's more about her in this
It
documentary.
mu Notoriety must come with the name.
Yeah,
It's gotta come
Joan.
with the name. Hmm.
Joan is a pretty cool name, must
Hmm.
say.
It's my confirmation name.
It's my grandma's name.
I know.
Yeah, it's a cool name. Next on this list is Canewdon, the village of witches, also on YouTube, and this documentary explores the superstitious history of Canewdon, a village in Essex, and its association with witchcraft. Then we have Witch Hunt, A Century of Murder,
Hmm.
Channel 5. This series, presented by Susanna Lipscomb, examines the witch trials across the British Isles, including those in Essex, with a focus on Matthew Hopkins, the Witchfinder General. And then we have The Secret Lives of East Anglian Witches, and that's on YouTube. And this video discusses witch trials in East Anglia, including Essex, and examines the lives of those accused, which is nice because, like, often, we don't know a lot about the accused. A lot of them were unknowns and, like, erased from history, as, like, some of the people we were trying to talk about today, like, can't find much on them. So,
Yeah, everything kind of revolves around the trial and the
mhm.
accusations and not their personal lives, you know?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So it's nice to, I guess, humanize them a little bit more.
Yeah.
So hopefully that documentary does that. And then we have Lee on Sea, the witch trials documentary on YouTube, and this explores the witch trials in Lee on Sea in Essex, including the role of Matthew Hopkins. We didn't talk too much about Lee on Sea in this episode.
I want to watch all of these.
Yeah, these are fascinating. We might have to do a part two on this because with all the findings from all these other documentaries, I'm sure there's a lot more to talk about.
And definitely with the practical magic too, and all the new
Hmm.
news that we're gonna find coming out of their
Hmm.
filming situation in the UK, right?
Yeah,
It'll be a thick topic.
this is gonna be a rabbit hole and a rabbit hole and a rabbit
I
hole, and it's
know.
just gonna keep going.
Buckle in.
Yeah.
We need like an Essex contact who can help us with pronunciation of all of the names that are
Well,
gonna
we
come up.
have either Claire or Alex Clark.
Okay.
I know Alex Clark was commenting on a couple of our episodes over on the Spotify comment section, and she was telling us how to say things correctly. So
Yeah,
thank you,
it's
Alex, for weighing
appreciated.
in. Yeah, yeah, for
But
sure.
it doesn't stop there, right? Because not even through TV and documentaries, we got some books, books about witches of Essex, UK. The history of the Essex witch trials, particularly during the 16th and 17th centuries, offers chilling and captivating subjects for numerous books, both historical accounts and fictional interpretations. So here are some books you might find interesting. So we talked about that Discovery of Witches by Matthew Hopkins, written by the infamous witchfinder himself. This short text, while disturbing propaganda, offers a first-hand glimpse into the methods and justifications employed during the witch hunts. Then there's Witchfinders, a 17th century English tragedy by Malcolm Gaskell. This book recounts the most brutal witch hunt in English history, initiated by Matthew Hopkins and John Stern in 1645. Then we have The Examination and Confession of Certain Witches at Chelmsford in the county of Essex by Hermann Heinrich Beagle. This work delves into the fear-driven hysteria of the late 17th century, providing a case study of the Chelmsford witch trials based on testimonies and confessions. So there's another title called The Discovery of Witches and Witchcraft, the
Mm.
writings of the Witchfinder, again, Matthew Hopkins and John Stern. But this is a scholarly reprint of the writings of the Witchfinder General and his accomplice, offering valuable primary source material for understanding their methods and beliefs. Then we have John Stern's Confirmation and Discovery of Witchcraft, text, Context and Afterlife by Scott Eaton. This academic study analyzes the publication of John Stern, another key figure in the East Anglian witch hunt, contextualizing his ideas within the intellectual culture of the era. And then lastly, we have England's Witchcraft Trials by Willow Windsham. This historical account explores some of Britain's most infamous witch hunts and trials, drawing on primary sources like trial transcripts and parish records to illuminate the social conditions and beliefs that fueled the fervor. Additional works, these are fictional tales. We have Strange Magic, an Essex Witch Hunt Museum mystery by Sid Moore. This is the first in the series, and this book introduces Rosie Strange, who inherits a witch museum and gets entangled in a centuries-old mystery.
Ooh,
Nice.
that sounds cool. I want to read these.
We have Strange Fiction, an Essex witch mystery. Okay, so this is a series. There's Strange Magic is the first one by Sid Moore. Strange Fascination is the second book in the series. The series is called Essex Witch Museum Mystery, containing Rose Strange's adventures involving a mysterious boulder and severed head.
Oh.
Okay, and then she has the third book is called Strange Sight. Third installment sees Rosie investigating hauntings and murder in a restaurant, ultimately uncovering a conspiracy. And then this fourth book of hers is called Strange Tombs. And Rosie and Sam investigate a death at a creative writing course facing strange occurrences and unearthly secrets.
Wait, but this is all this is all a murder mystery, like a museum mystery?
It sounds, yeah, the 4-book series in Essex Witch Museum Mystery.
That's
Witch
really
Museum.
cool. That's
Yeah. And then finally, this book by Barbara Cartland is called The Blue-Eyed Witch. This romance novel features a nobleman who rescues a young woman accused of witchcraft in the witch county of Essex and falls under her spell. This list offers a starting point for exploring the rich and often disturbing history of the Essex witches throughout various literary lenses. So remember to consider the historical tenets and potential biases when reading historical accounts.
Yeah, I like this is a fun episode. I love like getting like the spooky ookies, getting ready for spooky season and
Yeah.
talking about all these like ghost stories and legends and like witchcraft and lore and where they're filming Book of Magic. There's so much history there.
And like the real people and the real like things are often scarier than fiction, right? And that's why it's
Right.
such a like it's just makes it even more scary.
Yeah, yo, people, I'm horrified. People
I
are
know.
horrible.
They are.
People are also good, but there are some people that are horrible, and history is a scary place, man.
Yeah,
Yeah,
reality is often scarier than fiction.
reality is very scary. That's why I feel like half of us like to just like stick our nose in a book and escape
Escape.
from it all, right?
Escape here on Magnolia Street with us.
Or a movie or on Magnolia Street.
Right.
Speaking of Magnolia Street, if you guys would like to support the podcast, you can support us for as little as $1 a month. That's our seedling tier, and that gets you access to our patron-only polls where you get to weigh in on what topics you would like us to talk about next. It also gets you our monthly calendar so you can see what topics we have coming up for the month, and it also gets you a welcome shout out on the show. Our $3 Lavender Bud tier gets you our show notes for each episode in an aesthetically pleasing PDF, our after hours posts, if there's any extra tidbits or behind the scenes info pertaining to any of our episodes, we'll post those along with a blog post or extra photos, and access to our specially curated Spotify playlists. We have created playlists for our WMSR episodes as well as Production Dream playlists for each song episode, and more. Our $5 Lilac tier gets you access to our private Facebook community where we host a monthly live stream. Plus, you'll get access to our Discord server where we host our monthly watch parties. And also on the Discord, you can join in on the discussion with other Magnolia Street neighbors via the various interesting channels and threads. And then here's the $8 Rose tier. This gets you access to extra audio visual content such as a once a month full-length video episode, unlimited bonus videos, uncut footage, cutting room floor footage, bloopers, outtakes, meditations, exclusive interviews, and old home videos from the vault, or spell or ritual videos, and more. It also gets you bonus content to coincide with our song-episodes, such as full-length demo streams of our original Practical Magic inspired music, plus lyric sheets, guitar chords, and original scratch demos, or bonus video performances of our songs and more. Lastly, we have our $15 Wisteria Vine tier. Just like a twisting Wisteria Vine, there's a way for you to stay connected with us, the Stinas. In this tier, we invite you to join our private Marco Polo video messaging app. The app is totally free for both Android and iOS. Sign up with your phone number or email, and we will help you do the rest. This is a great way to chat with each other in a more intimate group setting, face-to-face via video recording. We love to show each other our pets, our gardens, or anything else you'd like to share. And just a reminder that the higher the tier you sign up under, the more rewards you get, because you get all of the rewards of the tiers below it. You can upgrade or downgrade or even cancel at any time. So to support the podcast, head to patreon.com/Magnolia Street Podcast.
Yeah, and there are additional ways to support us and our podcast that don't cost you any money. If you do listen on Spotify, please give us a star rating. If you listen to us on Apple Podcasts, please give us a written review. We love sharing those on our Instagram. And if you're on Instagram, we would really appreciate any reposts or blurbs about our podcast. And make sure to tag us at Magnolia Street Podcast in your feed, posts, stories, and share us with your practical magic loving friends.
Yeah. And also, before we close out, we just want to remind you guys, don't forget that our new album, Welcome to the Neighborhood, the Magnolia Street Sessions Volume 1, is out now, available for streaming on all platforms. And if you'd like to support us directly, you can purchase the digital album from the Stinas of magnoliastreet.bandcamp.com. And we do hope to do a physical release in the near future, so just keep a lookout for that. And then also come back next week for an all new episode. There's a little witch in
all of us. Ritual inks lined up.
Ritual inks coming up on the docket. And yeah, we're gonna keep hitting you guys with that PM2 news at the top of the hour of the foreseeable future, right? Until
Correct.
the movie
We'll
comes
see you
out.
next time.
So definitely come back next week for all that and more. So yeah, just to recap, today we've peeled back the veil on the Witches of Essex, not just the women of history, but the women of story. The women of story, the cunning folk, the healers, the outcasts, and how their legacy lives on in the pages of Alice Hoffman's Magic Lessons and the Book of Magic.
Hoffman may write in fiction, but she casts her spell with threads of truth, channeling fear, power, persecution, and resilience that defined real women accused of witchcraft in the 17th century Essex.
And it's no coincidence that Maria Owens, born in Essex, carries those truths with her across oceans and generations. Her roots in England witchcraft ripple outward through time into Salem, into the curse, and into the lives of every Owens women who comes after.
This episode wasn't just about place, it was about inheritance. We talk about generational inheritance of curses and trauma, about how the echoes of those early witches still resonate through magical fiction and our collective imagination.
So whether you're reading magic lessons for the first time or lighting a candle in memory of the wise women who came before us, may we never forget the lessons buried in the ashes and the stories waiting to be told and the stories that were never told.
Yeah, so thank you for joining us as we honor the Witches of Essex, both real and reimagined. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to leave us a rating, a comment. You can follow us on Spotify, share it with your fellow witchy soul, practical magic loving friends. Leave us a review. Your words are a little magic of their own.
Yeah, and as always, stay curious, stay enchanted, and remember, there's a little witch in all of us.
Are we getting better at podcasting?
I think we might be, yeah.
We're getting tight, man.
Yeah,
All right.
I like this conclusion thing, you know?
Yeah.
Little sign off. So
Professionalism.
Profesh. So with that said, I'm Justina.
I'm Christina.
And we'll see you next time.
At the house on Magnolia Street, would you go down to Magnolia Street when the wisteria go wild? At the house of magic and mystery, so would you go down to Magnolia Street?
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, those poor souls dragging their asses through season 1, half of season 2. Just wait.
I am so baffled by anybody who has made it this far and has actually listened to every single episode.
Yeah.
You know?
Maybe they're like, okay, there are so many episodes, they have to get better, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we do. I think even our earlier episodes that kind of sound crappy and like we don't really have our shit together as far as format is concerned yet, they're still enjoyable to listen to because we're just being ourselves, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
We're a shit show. We're still gremlins, but now we're a little more polished gremlins.
We have Gillum on our side.
Gillum, he's definitely
and
a Virgo.
Wilhelmina.
Wilhelmina A. Ingram.